Chapter 160. Wen Bao's defeat made people sigh with emotion. When no one was optimistic about him, he bravely chose to go into battle. Unexpectedly, he fought in a domineering manner, but unexpectedly, he spurted out blood and was defeated. He was a mysterious dark horse. Of course, except for a few elders with amazing eyesight, most people couldn't see the mystery behind it. What kind of power Wen Bao obtained from the brocade pouch had become a delightful gossip. Some people said that he had taken a forbidden drug, some people said that he was just deliberately mystifying. In fact, the dead fatty was originally very powerful. Some people said that the brocade pouch was a newly developed magical treasure from Lingjian school, which had the ability to store magical power. Of course, for the contestants from the two sects, no matter how amazing Wen Bao's performance was, it was just a thing of the past. No matter how many mysteries were hidden in his body, as a loser, he had lost his attractiveness. What was really worth paying attention to were the four cultivators who had defeated their opponents and advanced to the next round of the competition. After the first 4 rounds, both sides had more or less exposed their cards and weaknesses. Zhang Zai's thunder body, Lu Li's water and fire dual swords, Wang Lu's counter-injury nameless sword, and Yi Feifei's imperial sky technique. The second round of the competition was set for the next day. The contestants had 1 day to restore their magical power, heal their injuries, and deduce and arrange their tactics according to the new information. Among them, except for Wang Lu, the other 3 victors almost all advanced to the next round without any damage, so they didn't need to restore anything. However, Wang Lu's situation was more worrying. On the field, although he beautifully defeated a powerful opponent, his own injury was not light. Many people speculated that Spirit Sword sex substitute, Yu Xinyao, would likely have to put on her armor and go on the field. However, for the person involved, this speculation was nonsense. What a joke. Let little you replace me? Isn't that pushing the little girl into the fire pit? With her 3-legged cat's kung fu, it would be strange if Yi Feifei didn't beat her out of her body. Senior brother, although I am very grateful for your consideration for me, what you said is too, I'm sorry, I'm too frank. But forget about replacing me. This time, the opponent is very strong. Except for me and Lu Li, the others have no chance of winning if they don't rely on brocade sacks. And as for brocade sacks, there's no suitable brocade sacks for you. Wang Lu was lying in his bedroom on the non-phase peak, facing Yu Xinyao who came to visit. He comforted her. This kind of injury is nothing. I don't know how many times I've experienced more serious injuries in the savage land. It won't hurt my muscles or bones at all. I just need to take some medicine and sleep, and I'll be fully recovered by tomorrow morning. Yu Xinyao was still somewhat worried. But this precious pre-war preparation time will be wasted in vain. Wang Lu smiled. Why do we need to prepare to deal with Yi Feifei? If Zhang Zai and Lu Li are his opponents, he indeed needs to prepare. Yi Feifei is not qualified enough. Senior brother, aren't you being too careless? In front of the sickbed, the simple and honest original flavor warrior Wen Bao said, Yi Feifei is actually very powerful. Because Yu Xinyao was sitting next to him, the fatty was obviously a bit uncomfortable. He was especially worried that she would know the truth about the brocade sacks. Even though he was just sitting there, he was already sweating profusely. However, he still insisted on explaining his combat experience to Wang Lu in full detail. Although Yi Feifei has already revealed her trump card, her strength is not just that. I know, her spells should be very strong. Although your protective aura shield has been immune to her several rounds of probing, that's only because she hasn't used her finishing move yet. In any case, she's the second in the younger generation of the 10,000 Arts sect, so her attack power can't possibly be so weak. Wen Bao said, yes, she has speed and attack power. For you, senior brother, it should be very difficult. Difficult? Wang Lu made an incredulous expression. Why would it be difficult? Because. Senior brother, don't you only have the ability to counterattack when facing a melee opponent? Although it was embarrassing to say it out loud, even Wen Bao could see that Wang Lu's counterattack ability was ineffective against a long-range attack. Zhao Jiangyuan lost because he was eager to win. If he had kept the distance and bombarded Wang Lu with spells, then Wang Lu would simply be a sandbag. But Yi Feifei was undoubtedly a master of long-range bombardment. She simply wouldn't fight in close combat. Wang Lu sneered. Mortal's wisdom. Since I know that there's no chance of winning by keeping the distance, I naturally have to find a way to catch her. Wen Bao was stunned. How to catch her? Spells are definitely not going to work. The opponent is from the 10,000 Arts sect, or should I rely on Lao AI? But Lao AI can't fly. Wang Lu said, if you don't have enough IQ, don't think about this complicated problem. I have my own solution. If you guys really want to help me with my plan, you might as well analyze Luli. What? In front of the sickbed, the several senior and junior brothers who came to visit were taken aback. This senior brother Wang Lu was too ambitious. He hasn't even won the semi-final, but he has already begun to prepare for the final. Moreover, how could he be sure that the winner would be Luli? Nonsense, of course, it's because I'll help her. In any case, we're from the same sect. Even if there's a competitive relationship, how could I not help when we're facing a common enemy? This remark simply refreshed a lot of people's worldview. Especially the several outer court disciples who didn't know much about Wang Lu. They were so surprised that their jaws dropped. Among them, a junior sister who came with Yu Xinyao softly asked her senior sister Wen Yin, "Senior sister, didn't you say that there are no good people on the non-phase peak?" Wen Yin was very embarrassed. Everyone actually has a lot of misunderstandings about the non-phase peak. On the other side, Wang Lu had already talked about Lu Li's problem in depth. At present, in a head-on confrontation, no one can defeat Lu Li. Even my anti-injury swordsmanship can't withstand her brilliant sword heart. Therefore, if you want to win, you must use some tricks. You should have more contact with Lu Li than me. Tell me the details of her life. I want to see if there's anything that can be used. For example, where does she usually eat? What's her usual taste? The junior sister who was whispering with Wen Yin just now, Ma Yunwan, couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother Wang Lu, do you want to poison senior sister Lu Li by asking this?" Nonsense, otherwise, why would I make her a midnight snack? Junior sister Yunwan couldn't believe her ears. Who could talk about conspiracies in such a dignified and righteous manner? Wang Lu also said, in addition, what kind of books does she like to read? What kind of music does she like to listen to? Oh, right, has she ever been in love? Wang Lu asked several questions in a row. Unfortunately, because the answers just now were too straightforward, for a while, no one responded. You don't know this, and you don't know that either. You guys are too insincere in visiting a patient. Wang Lu sighed with emotion. But it doesn't matter, you can also pay. Not long after, the people in the room had all left. For the people of the 10,000 Arts sect, this was a sleepless night. Although after a round of fighting, both Zhang Zai and Yi Feifei were somewhat exhausted, at this time, it was more important to analyze the next opponent. According to the arrangement of the elders of the two sects, the next day would be the fight between Wang Lu and Yi Feifei, followed by Zhang Zai and Lu Li. After witnessing Lu Li's fire and water double swords, Zhang Zai returned to the Cloud Wave boat and went into closed-door training, thinking hard about countermeasures to improve his odds of winning. Meanwhile, Yi Feifei and several junior brothers and sisters were in the pink house of the Spirit Pool Peak, discussing countermeasures together. Unlike Zhang Zai's situation, the real strength of Yi Feifei's opponent didn't lie in his own strength, but rather in his endless plots and tricks. Even a small part of Zhao Jianyuan's defeat could be attributed to the opponent's ability to grasp people's mind. When everyone thought that Wang Lu would use a dirty trick to win, he suddenly acted upright, which in itself could be considered as a dirty trick. For such an opponent, closed-door training was meaningless. It was better to use the power of others to think about how to guard against the opponent's tricks. Little Hai, you've been with Wang Lu the most, do you have any idea? Senior sister, you think too highly of me. Against Wang Lu, I'm also helpless. Hai Yunfan wryly smiled. Remembering his conversation with Wang Lu not long ago, his heart palpitated even more. However, what should be said must be said. Actually, to deal with Wang Lu, it's not that difficult. In the end, in a fight, strength is the most important. In the previous 4 rounds of battle, he made a total of 3 moves. There are still traces to follow. Although the other disciples were called to the room by Yi Feifei, they actually didn't have any ideas, and at this time, they all became an audience. In the 3 moves, he targeted the weaknesses of people's minds. Eldest senior brother is too inexperienced in the matters between men and women, third senior brother is too afraid of his off-the-field tricks, and lost his impatience, and Wen Bao, presumably, was stimulated by Wang Lu's mind tricks. Actually, thinking from another angle, this matter isn't difficult to analyze. With Master and the others present, there aren't many moves that Wang Lu can use. Can he poison? Can he swallow forbidden drugs? Can he play tricks on the field? So what he can do, is only to attack the mind. Hai Yinfan's reasoning was very simple, but when Yi Feifei and the others heard it, they felt suddenly enlightened. If you put it like this, Wang Lu actually isn't that scary. At least in this competition between the 2 sects, he doesn't have too many opportunities to display his skills, so. Senior sister, in fact, as long as you grasp your own rhythm, and don't make any dizzy moves, you will definitely win. Hai Yunfan said, smiling in isolation. Although senior brother Zhao lost, at least he forced out his trump card, that suicidal sword move. The conditions are very strict, right? Zhao Jiangyuan said with annoyance, now that I think about it, that vibration power came from the place where the 2 swords met. It can only be used in close combat. If I had opened the distance earlier, and released the flying sword to attack the enemy, at least I would have been in a position where I wouldn't have been defeated. Hai Yunfan said, senior sister, you are the best at long-range fighting. If the distance is long enough, even eldest senior brother can't catch up to you. Yi Feifei laughed in spite of herself. How can I be compared with eldest senior brother? Once his annihilation thunder came out, I simply have no room to resist. But if, as you said, Wang Lu doesn't have the ability to resist long range, then there's nothing to be afraid of. Hai Yunfan said, but we still have to be careful. Next, let's try to deduce the non-phase method. Senior brother Zhao has fought against him, so he should have obtained a lot of valuable first-hand information. Zhao Jiangyuan nodded. Yes, although I dare not say that I have the essence, but I do have a little bit of the knack. First of all, amidst the active discussion of the crowd, the rhythm of the battle preparation became more and more intense. Chapter 161. The highly anticipated semi-final began on time the next morning. The first one was the fight between Wang Lu and Yi Feifei, which was also known as the showdown between the number 2 figures of the 2 sections. There was no doubt that Yi Feifei was ranked second among the 5 people of the 10,000 Arts sect. However, Wang Lu was quite dissatisfied with the fact that he was ranked below Lu Li. Ridiculous. As a successor disciple, isn't it just that my cultivation base is lower than hers? I entered the sect later than her, I'm younger than her, and my reputation is worse than hers? Why should I tacitly agree that she's the lead disciple? I think you've listed the reasons very clearly, haven't you? Nevertheless, in Wang Lu's view, it was obvious that only he had the qualification to be the lead disciple. Even Zhu Shiyao, who had cultivated for more than 10 years and thus couldn't participate in the competition, was not qualified to take away the lead disciple position from his hands. There's no other way. Since everyone doesn't recognize me, then I'll fight until everyone recognizes me. Congratulations, sister-in-law, you will become an important stepping stone on my way to the lead disciple position. Standing at the other end of the platform, Yi Feifei was very puzzled. What's with that sister-in-law address? Is it some kind of provocative statement? At the same time, under the platform, Hai Yunfan's heart almost jumped out of his chest, thinking, boss, don't play me like this. Wang Lu, I've seen through you. Yi Feifei was full of confidence. She looked straight at her opponent with awe-inspiring eyes. You have no chance. Wang Lu looked at Yi Feifei, especially at her pair of eyes that were full of confidence. He then laughed in spite of himself. I really thought you've seen through me. Sure enough, it's just a bluff. Yi Feifei sneered. Whether it's a bluff or not, who's the bluff, we'll know when the fight begins. Oh. Wang Lu casually responded with a sound and then whistled. Woof. The model dog Huawei cheerfully jumped onto the platform and jumped around Wang Lu's feet. TSK, still the same old trick. Below the stage, Zhao Jiangyuan looked at the broken dog with some resentment. His wrist was still faintly aching. That dog's teeth were sharp, and its mouth was quite marvelous. Yesterday, when he was bitten on the wrist, not only was the pain piercing into his heart, it caused his magic power to stagnate, and the wound did not heal throughout the entire battle. Even after his master's treatment, the recovery was still very slow. But to release the dog to bite someone, he could only rely on the element of surprise. Apart from its sharp teeth, the dog had no other strong points. Not only was it weak, it wasn't fast, and it didn't have any special abilities such as invisibility and transformation. Once someone was on guard, it wouldn't pose a threat at all. As for shape-shifting, it was a special move that could only be used once. This time, Wang Lu brought out this stupid dog again. It could be seen that he was at his wit's end. Thinking to this, Zhao Jianyuan's heart was a bit more comfortable. Although he lost, he could let his senior sister win easily, so it could be considered as a worthwhile loss. It would be best if his big brother could defeat Luli in the afternoon, and then in the final match with his senior sister, he could ruthlessly slap the Lingjian school's face. Let them know that their insignificant skills were not worth mentioning, and that the prosperity of a sect depended on strength, not conspiracy. Senior sister, come on. Zhao Jiangyuan led Lu Qiankai and Hai Yunfan to actively encourage Yi Feifei. Unfortunately, his big brother was still in closed-door training to deal with the afternoon match. Otherwise, if he could pull him along to cheer for his senior sister, she would definitely be extremely moved, and then her fighting strength would skyrocket. However, after cheering for a while, Zhao Jiangyuan suddenly found that his senior sister's eyes were a bit strange. They seemed to be wandering. Although the match had not yet started, the warm-up before the match was very important. She should release some necessary spells to adjust her primordial spirit and body so that she could quickly enter the fighting state. At this time, his senior sister should seriously lock on Wang Lu's every move, and not look at Wang Lu for a while, and then look at the model dog for a while. That's strange. Why does senior sister look so uneasy? Did she lose her chi while channeling? It can't be. Yeah, senior sister has always been the most patient, even big brother can't compare to her in this aspect. Why does she feel a little guilty now? The more Zhao Jiangyuan and Lu Qiankai looked at her, the more strange it became, but they couldn't see through it, so they could only shake their heads and continue to cheer for her. At this time, the elders of both sides had finished checking the conditions of Wang Lu and Yi Feifei. After confirming that there were no problems, they only needed to announce the start of the match. Oh no. A light flashed in Hai Yunfan's mind, and he realized that there was a great danger here. Unfortunately, it was too late to remind him. The match had officially started. The cloud platform rose high, separating it from the audience. This was also a lesson learned from the first round. At that time, when Zhang Zai was fighting against Yu Yun, he was about to win, but Wang Lu's voice stirred up the waves, and he almost lost. Since then, Lingjian School didn't need to be reminded by the opponent to make a timely patch. Now on the cloud platform, although the audience could still clearly see the situation in the arena, they couldn't exert any influence, even their cheers couldn't be heard. It was an absolutely fair and isolated competition venue. At the start of the battle, Yi Feifei didn't hold back and immediately used the Imperial Sky technique to soar into the sky. This flight caused a burst of exclamations, because Yi Feifei's movements were obviously much faster than yesterday. In the battle with Wan Bao, she really didn't use her true skills. But facing Wang Lu, she didn't care about hiding any of her trump cards. A pillar of fire that pierced through the sky, as Yi Feifei's first spell, officially opened the curtains of the battle. Using a low-level foundation establishment cultivation to control the heavenly fire, Yi Feifei proved her strength as the number 2 trump card in the beginning. And Wang Lu used the sword of Mount Kun to create a sword defense to dissipate the pillar of fire, proving his heaven-defying defensive power. But after this attack, Yi Feifei felt at ease, because the heavenly fire was only dispersed, the firepower wasn't counterattacked. As expected, Wang Lu's counterattack ability was only limited to close combat. Since it's like this, as long as she keeps her distance, he's just a thick sandbag, no threat at all. Next, as long as she doesn't fall into his trap, no matter what, she'll at least be in an invincible position. Also, although Wang Lu's defensive ability is strong, but according to the deductions of her juniors, it's not completely flawless. His super strong defensive ability is actually not perfect. A large portion of the damage is absorbed by his body, so it looks like his defensive ability far exceeds the average level. But there's a huge flaw here. Once the opponent's attack exceeds the limit of his defensive ability, this seemingly perfect defensive system will immediately collapse. Other cultivators will only be injured when their defense is broken, but if it's Wang Lu, it's very likely that he'll be seriously injured and on the verge of death, losing on the spot. And Yi Feifei, in fact, is most proficient in this kind of battle. Although she is a woman, her magical power is vigorous, and her ability to fight a protracted battle is not inferior to Zhang Zai's. If this stalemate must continue, she doesn't think that the high-level qi cultivating stage Wang Lu can last longer than her. However, Wang Lu didn't intend to honestly fight with Yi Feifei. After blocking the first heavenly fire, Wang Lu did something that made Yi Feifei dumbfounded. He stretched out his hand, picked up the stupid dog at his feet, and fiercely threw it up. The stupid dog bared its fangs and brandished its claws in the air. Its face was ferocious, and its mouth was shining with a cold light. Unfortunately, Wang Lu's aim was not good, and the stupid dog and Yi Feifei brushed past each other. Then, there was only a muffled sound, and the stupid dog fell back onto the cloud platform. It was shaken to the point of confusion, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of its mouth. It couldn't get up for a long time. Wang Lu shook his head, and slowly walked over. Without any pity, he picked up the stupid dog again, and unexpectedly planned to throw it again. At this time, Yi Feifei, who was in the sky, widened her eyes, and asked incredulously, "You, what are you doing?" Wang Lu laughed, "Counterattack. Relying on this move. What else can I do? Chant an incantation? The only attack I can use now is to release the dog to bite people, but you are flying so high, I have no other choice but to throw the stupid dog." Yi Feifei was so angry that her whole body trembled. You are simply inhumane." Wang Lu laughed, "It's okay, I still have my bestial nature." Then, he threw the flying dog again. Unfortunately, this time, its aim was still not good enough, and it once again missed Yi Feifei. However, Yi Feifei unexpectedly stretched out her hand and pointed at the stupid dog, and a thin mist condensed on its body. The mist wrapped around it and it gently fell to the ground, so that it wouldn't get hurt. Wang Lu let out an "oh" sound. So kind? His eyes were full of ridicule. Yi Feifei was inwardly shocked, knowing that she had exposed her flaw. She quickly used her usual magical treasure, the red jade coral, to urge her magical power. However, the next moment, the scene in front of her made her breath stagnate, and her magical power suddenly scattered, shaking her jade mansion. Wang Lu actually fiercely kicked his spirit pet. Moreover, it was aimed at the sensitive part of its mouth and nose, which made it bleed. "You!" Wang Lu ignored Yi Feifei, and coldly scolded his own dog, "Idiot, I gave you 2 chances, but you still can't bite the person, what's the use of you?" The stupid dog whimpered miserably. "Bark, you only know how to bark. If you have the ability, go bite that woman for me. Go." Wang Lu said, and then ruthlessly kicked the dog. The stupid dog screamed and vomited blood. "Hee, just now, when that woman gave you the mist to slow down, her sympathy was overflowing. Unfortunately, in a battle, how could you be so sentimental? You've been in contact with her for a long time, haven't you? People always say that loyal dogs are loyal dogs, but you, this cheap thing, are actually a traitor. With that, he kicked the dog's throat, and the stupid dog's screams came to an abrupt stop. A moment later, it spat out a lot of blood clots. On and off the stage, there was a dead silence. Yi Feifei, who was in the air, only saw blood red, and her whole body uncontrollably trembled. You vicious slut. Go to hell. The next moment, under the stage, Hai Yunfan anxiously said, Senior sister, don't be fooled. Unfortunately, at this time, the Cloud Tread rooftop was already completely isolated from outside interference. Under extreme anger, Yi Feifei's right hand's index and ring fingers moved slightly, and used a spell. In a flash, she appeared behind Wang Lu. Gale instant movement. This was Yi Feifei's trump card to save her life, but at this time, she used it to attack the opponent and catch him off guard. Yi Feifei held the vermilion coral tightly in one hand, and heavenly fire boiled and turned, while her other hand reached down, preparing to save the severely injured and dying spirit pet. Although Yi Feifei moved in a hurry, she came prepared. The coral heavenly fire in her right hand was ready but not released, to prevent the counterattack from the sword technique. When her left hand reached down, she used her finger technique to form a contract-breaking seal. With just a little, she could break the weak contract relationship between Wang Lu and Tao Wu. Without the contract, the spiritual pet would be free, and would no longer be bullied by this evil master. However, just as her left hand was about to touch the spiritual pet, Yi Feifei clearly saw two cold smiles. Wang Lu and the model dog, the smile of one person and one pet was actually so similar. The next moment, her left hand was in severe pain. That model dog had viciously bitten her, and at this time, Yi Feifei finally realized what her junior brother said about the unforgettable pain that could make one's vision go black. In an instant, even the Spirit Fog Sutra in her jade mansion could not withstand the impact, and with a cracking sound, cracks appeared. Yi Feifei's whole body's magical power trembled, and she almost lost control. However, how could Wang Lu just sit and watch his opponent recover from the pain and adjust her breathing? The sword of Mount Kuan, neither too fast nor too slow, was just right on the red jade coral. Oh no! The magical power in the red jade coral was ready to be released, but it was in a state that could erupt at any time. Stimulated by the sword of Mount Kuan, plus Yi Feifei's magical power was out of control, the heavenly fire suddenly overflowed, burning the sky and boiling the sea. And Wang Lu's blade armor also quietly opened. Chapter 162. Senior sister, are you okay? When she woke up, she saw the worried face of her junior brother, Hai Yunfan. Yi Feifei somewhat weakly nodded and then stood up. Her injury was not heavy. Before the burning heaven fire could burn her head, it was suppressed by the supreme magical ability of the referee elder. Her jade mansion was just shaken and she suffered internal injuries. After adjusting her breath in the rest area for a while, she regained her consciousness. Then, ignoring the advice of her junior brothers and the elders, she strode toward the opposite side of the cloud platform, the rest area of the Lingjian school. Sure enough, Wang Lu was also there. While coughing up blood, he was teasing the dog with streaky pork. Seeing Yi Feifei's menacing attitude, the surrounding disciples tacitly gave way to Wang Lu and sold him out. Yo, isn't this the dog fan? Oh, wrong, dog lover Yi Feifei. What do you want? Wang Lu's face was full of ridicule, which immediately made Yi Feifei angry. You've already planned this? Her heart was sullen, but her voice was cold. That's right. Yesterday, when I brought the dog on stage, it caused all kinds of screams, and you were one of them. I heard it clearly. At that time, I already planned how to deal with you. Wang Lu was particularly calm. He then picked up the stupid dog and shook it at Yi Feifei. Do you like it? Although it's a bit stupid. Yi Feifei said, the part about abusing the dog, was also fake? Nonsense, this stupid thing has thick skin and thick flesh. Even if I wanted to abuse it, it wouldn't hurt. It's nothing more than feeding it several kilograms of blood tofu. Blood, shameless. It's better than being brainless. Wang Lu didn't care about the other side's accusation. A dignified Foundation establishment cultivator can't even recognize blood tofu, yet you still have the nerve to say that you're good at calm and cautious fighting? Hearing this, Yi Feifei was ashamed and angry. She couldn't wait to immediately fight with Wang Lu again. However, in the end, she suppressed her anger and calmed down. Wang Lu, you haven't really learned animal taming technique. Wang Lu used his leg to tease the stupid dog and said, "Of course I haven't learned it. I just casually exchanged a contract. Without the beast taming technique, the human and the pet will be separated. What use do you have for it?" Wang Lu laughed and said, "Isn't it a little funny for a loser like you to ask this question? Humph, such a spirit pet falling into your hands is a complete waste." Yi Feifei said, "You and it are not suitable. Hey, I feel like there's a lot of information in this line of yours that you can't wait to snatch away my love." Yi Feifei ignored Wang Lu's mockery and just coldly put forward her own request, "I want to exchange your pet with intelligence. You name a price. 80 billion spirit stones." You. Yi Feifei heard the sky-high price and knew that the other party was not sincere at all. "Your cultivation system is completely incompatible with the animal taming technique. Your Lingjian school also doesn't have the inheritance of animal taming technique. What do you want it for? And you don't like spiritual pets at all." Wang Lu said, "And then? You want to say that you have the animal taming technique, so you are more suitable to raise a pet?" Yi Feifei said, "Yes, I am currently lacking a spiritual pet that can communicate with me and is good at close combat." "Oh, then quickly prepare the 80 billion spirit stones. When you have enough, we can trade. Please show some sincerity." "Why should I show sincerity? When have you ever seen those tall, rich, and handsome men who indulge themselves in women sincerely give the women they're sick of *king to losers to ride on?" Yi Feifei frowned. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "Oh, then let me briefly explain. If you don't have money, then wash and sleep, child." While speaking, Wang Lu kicked the stupid dog. The stupid dog immediately bared its teeth and showed a fierce expression. Yi Feifei was disappointed. She knew that she had no chance at all, so she didn't say anything more and turned around to leave. However, when she was at the edge of the resting area, she couldn't help but say, "Wang Lu, don't think that you can keep going by relying on tricks and intrigues. In the finals, I will teach you a lesson." "Ha ha ha, teach me a lesson in the audience? Then let's wait and see." In the afternoon, the Cloud Tread rooftop was once again crowded with people. In many people's view, the semi-final between Lu Li and Zhang Zai was the real pinnacle showdown. Although Wang Lu's match was constantly unfolding, from a cultivator's point of view, it was unavoidably too unconventional and not the right way. The ones who could truly represent the top level of the young disciples of the 2-5 uniques were Lu Li and Zhang Zai. And for this pinnacle showdown, the two sects had already been preparing for it since yesterday. As if by prior agreement, the two parties simultaneously went into closed-door training, and other people from their sects had also done a lot of work. For example, creating public opinion and spreading a rumor. Before the start of the match, the news about the two contestants was overwhelming. No one knew from which channel it came. Some said that Zhang Zai's thunder body was just a cover, and his real trump card was still hidden. Some said that although Zhang Zai's cultivation base was high, the flaw in his temperament was too big, which made him easy to be taken advantage of. Some also said that Zhang Zai fell in love with Lu Li at first sight, so he was likely to be unable to go all out in the match. Of course, there was even more news about Lu Li. For example, Lu Li was simple-minded and likely to be deceived by people's crafty plots. Making a fuss on this point could be a small capital gain. Another example was that Lu Li was shocked by Zhang Zai's heroic appearance when he displayed his thunder body, and her heart was secretly in love with him. As long as Zhang Zai promptly confessed, there would be a great chance for him. Of course, the source of the latter news was very suspicious. Considering that there was a certain person who could use all kinds of psychological attack, the people of the 10,000 Arts sect strictly filtered the news, not letting Zhang Zai know about it. Otherwise, the 10,000 Arts sect's 10,000 motionless heart would likely collapse. At that time, the big brother of the 10,000 Arts sect would publicly confess his love to Lu Li on the arena, and then be publicly rejected, causing his mind to be in chaos. That would be a scandal that the sect could not wash off. Speaking of which, this time, we are really embarrassed. No wonder there are elders in the sect who said that the 9 regions is so big that there are always people better than you. Even in a small sect, there might be crouching tigers and hidden dragons. This Lingjian school is not as vulnerable as what the Xingjing sect said. In the rest area, Lu Qiankai couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Zhao Jiangyuan resentfully said, "How could the Xingjing sect be so kind as to tell us the truth? It's just that this Lingjian school is indeed more powerful than we imagined. Not to mention Wang Lu, that weirdo, Lu Li is really powerful. Moreover, Yu Yun, Wen Bao, although their cultivation base is not high, their basic skills are quite solid. Tisk, it's indeed a barbarian sect." Regarding his senior brother's ever-present sense of superiority, which was engraved in their bone marrow, Hai Yunfan could only smile wryly. Speaking of which, he himself felt strange. In his several years of cultivation in the 10,000 Arts sect, the sect treated him the same as the other senior brothers, so why didn't he have the arrogant mentality of the 10,000 Arts sect? No, perhaps in other sects, he would be the same as his senior brothers, maintaining a high and aloof attitude. However, in the Spirit Sword Mountain, where there was a certain someone, it would be difficult for him to be arrogant. Hai Yunfan sighed. He knew that if this went on for a long time, when his cultivation base was higher in the future, perhaps it would lead to a heart demon. Therefore, although he really didn't want to be enemies with Brother Wang, who told the Lingjian school to not take him in, thinking about this, Hai Yunfan decided to do something. "Senior brother, this is for you." Eldest brother Zhang Zai opened his eyes and curiously looked at the piece of white paper in Hai Yunfan's hand. There was a faint but profound immortal spirit aura on the paper, as well as a row of numbers and a few characters. "What's this?" Hai Yunfan smiled. "Nothing. Just now, I saw someone opening a gambling house under the Grand Cloud platform, so my hands were itchy, so I put some bets on senior brother's side." Zhang Zai narrowed his eyes. "Itchy hands and you dare to place such a heavy bet? 500,000 spirit stones is not a small number. It's a sure win bet, so it doesn't matter how heavy the bet is." Zhang Zai opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. After a while, he sighed. Junior brother, Hai Yunfan seemed to hear his senior brother's emotion, so he smiled. "Senior brother, you don't have to say anything, I believe you will win." "No, I want to say, since you know there's this kind of gambling house, why don't you call me to bet with you?" Hai Yunfan was stunned for a moment, but then he saw the teasing look in his senior brother's eyes. He couldn't help but laugh. It turns out that senior brother has already won. "Very well, in a moment, I will call senior sister and the others to bet together and win a bit more." Zhang Zai nodded and no longer said anything. He closed his eyes again and slowly refined the immortal heart that suppressed the 5 thunders in his jade mansion. As his master said, the heart cultivation method in the immortal cultivation world couldn't make people's heart as calm as a lake. However, brilliant cultivators could ingeniously use the immortal heart to achieve the same effect. Right now, Zhang Zai's heart only had the thought of winning. In order to win, all other distracting thoughts could be abandoned. And this was the correct way to use the 5 thunders' immortal heart. Seeing that his senior brother had completely entered the state, Hai Yunfan felt relieved. He secretly thought that he had underestimated his senior brother. Actually, he didn't need him to do anything. At this time, they suddenly heard a burst of exclamation from not far away. The crowd gathered around the black market merchant's place as if they had seen something incredible. Hai Yunfan's heart sank. He had an ominous premonition, so he quickly got up and walked over. 8 million spirit stones bet on Zhang Zai. These people are really bold. Several disciples of Spirit Sword sect were somewhat surprised, but they also looked in awe at the several cultivators in Chinese attire in front of the registration desk. Those cultivators were taciturn and indifferent, but their first move was actually earth-shattering. Hai Yunfan was inwardly surprised for a moment, but he immediately understood. These were the cultivators from other sects who came to watch the fight. The fight between the younger generation disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect and the Lingjian school might not be worthy of attention. However, if the lead disciple of the younger generation of the two sects competed, it would be enough to attract the attention of the Wanxian League. Although the Lingjian school was used to being low-key, this time, the 10,000 Arts sect mainly wanted to be high-profile. Before entering the Blue River region, their cloud wave boat had been swaggering across several regions, as if they were afraid that other people wouldn't know that they went to Lingjian school to challenge them. However, as soon as they entered the Spirit Sword Mountain, they immediately quieted down, which made a lot of people curious. Could it be that this group of people's face-slapping was too fierce, so the Lingjian school made a dumpling out of them? When the two sects officially began the fight between the disciples, the applications from the various sects of the Wanxian League to watch the fight increased. Those middle and low-rank sects didn't dare to expect to enter the encampment of the 5 uniques, but the high-rank sects, as well as the cultivators from the other 5 uniques, couldn't help but be curious. Hai Yunfan observed for a moment and guessed that they should be cultivators from the 10,000 Arts sect. Only those cultivators from the first-rank sects would be so generous. Moreover, they also sold a good deal to the 10,000 Arts sect. The relationship between the 10,000 Arts sect and the 10,000 Arts sect had always been good. Sure enough, not long after, not far away, they saw an elder from the Lingjian school, who then revealed the identity of the other party. They were indeed the elders sent by the 10,000 Arts sect to watch the fight. Facing the elders from the Lingjian school, they were courteous and considerate, but their attitude was neither cold nor warm. Their 8 million spirit stones bet on Zhang Zai was enough to show their position. After the 10,000 Arts sect, the representatives of several high-rank sects appeared. When they passed by the registration counter, they also placed their bets. However, most of them bet on Zhang Zai. Before long, Zhang Zai's side had reached tens of millions of spirit stones. Moreover, he also had several middle-rank and high-rank spiritual treasures, which were of even higher value. On the other hand, Lu Li's side was only a fraction of the other sides. In this regard, the several disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect were happy to see this. Whether these cultivators who came to watch the fight were really optimistic about Zhang Zai or simply wanted to express their goodwill to the 10,000 Arts sect, in the end, they had created a quite favorable public opinion environment before the fight. In this regard, the elders of the Lingjian school turned a blind eye. Although the disciples were indignant, they could do nothing about it. It was too difficult for them to compete with the elders of the high-rank sects in terms of wealth. After a while, several elders and even sect leaders of middle-rank and low-rank sects came over. They also received permission from the Lingjian school to come and watch the fight. However, the reason why the Lingjian school let them go was to show that the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League were not separated from the grassroots masses. This group of people was full of curiosity and excitement. When they arrived at the registration counter, one of the sect leaders couldn't help but laugh. It seems like this fight is simply one-sided. Oh, the peerless genius of the 10,000 Arts sect, Zhang Zai, has a thunderous reputation. However, that Lu Li's reputation isn't that great. Of course, there's a gap in strength between the second and third of the 5 uniques. Not to mention Zhang Zai is the lead disciple, but Lu Li is not. However, the odds of these two people are almost the same. I guess this is the bet opened by the people of the Lingjian school. So, of course, they would favor their own people. In my opinion, this is just a slap to the face, simply giving away money. I don't know if the several Daoist friends are interested in picking up some money. Ha ha ha, we're not as rich as sect leader Chiu, but it's not a problem to take out several 100,000 spirit stones to support the fight. Several people talked and laughed, and amidst the laughter, they managed to gather several million spirit stones and several magical treasures and elixirs, all of which were ready to bet on Zhang Zai. However, at this time, a disciple in red and white robe casually walked over. His hand was holding a few pieces of paper with rich immortal spirit energy, which he then put on the registration counter. I bet 50 million spirit stones on Lu Li. Chapter 163. When the words 50 million spirit stones appeared, there was dead silence around the registration desk as if time had stopped. After a while, a leader of a middle-rank sect stammered, How much did you say? The red and white cultivator turned his head and looked at him. 50 million spirit stones. What's wrong? You're just a disciple of Lingjian school, right? How can you have so many spirit stones? That elder said as he gradually recovered from his shock. 50 million spirit stones. Is it possible that your spirit sword sect has taken out its own treasury to place this bet? That's not very kind. You're the banker and you're betting yourself. This. TSK. Who told you it was our Lingjian school who opened the bet? If it was Lingjian school who opened the bet, are those elders of the high-rank sect stupid? Upon hearing this, even Hai Yunfan was a bit surprised. So this is not done by Spirit Sword Sect? Then there's only one place that allows everyone to place their bets without worrying about any problems. The red and white cultivator said with contempt. You can't even recognize the people of the mysterious Sky Mansion? When the cultivators heard this, they hurriedly looked at the staff behind the registration desk. The two of them had stiff and indifferent expressions, completely ignoring everything around them. They just silently checked the bets of the people who placed the bets, and then recorded it on the sign behind them. They thought they were disciples of Lingjian school, but it turned out that they were from the mysterious Sky Mansion. Wait, something's not right. You're a junior disciple, and your cultivation. I don't think you've reached the Foundation establishment realm. Where did you get so many spirit stones? A leader of a low-rank sect gritted his teeth. 50 million spirit stones was not an insignificant amount of pocket money even for the top 5 sects of the Wanxian League, but for a leader of a low-rank sect like him, it was an astronomical figure. Although he was also at the nascent soul realm, his net worth was far less than that of a nascent soul realm cultivator from a high-rank sect. 50 million spirit stones was enough to buy him 10 times over. The red and white cultivator sneered, I'm not a civil servant of the Wanxian League. Do I have the obligation to explain the source of my wealth to you? If you're a pauper, just play the role of a pauper and obediently drool in envy, jealousy, and hate. The less you talk, the less you lose face. You. As they spoke, the staff of the mysterious Sky Mansion had already completed their inspection. One of them even revealed a smile for the first time. 50 million spirit stones. It has been confirmed. This is your proof, please keep it. Wang Lu took an exquisitely shaped jade slip and put it into his mustard seed bag. Then, he ignored those small fries from the grassroots and returned to the side of the cloud platform. In the resting area of Lingjian School. One of the sect leaders still didn't believe it. He asked one of the staff members, that man just now, really had 50 million spirit stones? I saw that he only handed over a few pieces of paper. What exactly are those things that are worth 50 million? Unfortunately, according to the relevant regulations of the mysterious Sky Mansion, you have no right to know any private information of the VIPs of the mysterious Sky Mansion. However, about that piece of paper, I can tell you that it's an asset mortgage recognized by the mysterious Sky Mansion, which is also a popularized activity recently. If your sect is interested in a mortgage loan, you can go to the nearest mysterious Sky Mansion office to apply for it. Recently, there will be a discount. Mortgage what? The low-class sect leader was dumbfounded. A moment later, he felt disheartened. No matter what it was, at least it was a treasure that was recognized by the mysterious Sky Mansion as worth 50 million spirit stones. And that young man was clearly just a small high-level chi cultivating stage cultivator. The world of these top-ranked sects was too far away from him. The surrounding Spirit Sword sect disciples were also full of amazement. 50 million spirit stones. Senior brother Wang Lu really has 50 million spirit stones. Isn't it said that on the non-phase peak, besides the pauper, there are only scoundrels? How could he suddenly become so rich? Yeah, if he's really rich, why would he run to the Misty Peak cafeteria every day? Even a certain woman in white who was hiding in the dark was also stunned. The wine gourd in her hand rolled to the ground, and the spirit wine gushed out. This bastard, he has such a huge amount of money, but he doesn't know to give it to your master for safekeeping. This is simply outrageous. In fact, Wang Lu's 50 million spirit stones, not only was it not a freely circulating cash, but it was also public money. He had mortgaged most of the assets and even human resources of the Wisdom sect, and then put it all on the line. The value of this 50 million bet was not fake, but compared to those Yuanying deity stage elders of the big sects who directly put out their cash and magical treasures, there was still a world of difference in their net worth. However, considering that his cultivation time was short, it was already unimaginable that he could accumulate this kind of terrifying net worth. The nearby Hai Yunfan shook his head with a wry smile. In the past few years, he had also used the mysterious Sky Mansion to make several successful investments, so he had a small net worth. When it came to wealth, even his big brother was not as rich as him. However, compared to brother Wang's 50 million, it was not even worth mentioning. Moreover, what really made Hai Yunfan feel the pressure was the confidence behind Wang Lu's 50 million bet. This was not the opening of the Lingjian school. If he lost this 50 million, it would be like throwing away a stone, even if he was a distinguished guest of the mysterious Sky Mansion. No matter how heaven-defying Wang Lu was, it was impossible for him to not take this 50 million spirit stones seriously. Since he dared to bet, he naturally had the confidence to win. And Wang Lu's vision had always been extremely accurate. When Hai Yunfan returned to the rest area, sure enough, the complexion of his several senior brothers and sisters was somewhat strange. Hai Yunfan smiled bitterly in his heart. Sure enough, this kind of thing could not be hidden at all. Outside the rest area, the matter of the 50 million spirit stones had already been hyped up. And when they learned that Wang Lu's 50 million bet was certain to win, their mood began to become serious. Even the leading elders frowned and had some ideas in their hearts. What was worse was that the big brother, who was meditating with his eyes closed, also seemed to be shaken. Wang Lu's 50 million was really too much pressure. Hai Yunfan sighed in his heart. He had to applaud Wang Lu's move. It was still a psychological attack, still so simple and direct, even a bit crude, but it still had an effect. From the beginning of the fight to the present, Wang Lu had been using this trick, and it had always been successful. He was worthy of being a professional adventurer. However, this was the end of it. With a calm confidence, Hai Yunfan softly said, "Elders, senior brothers and sisters, I think there's actually nothing to worry about." Zhang Zai, who was meditating with his eyes closed, gently opened his eyes. The other people also directly looked at him. Hai Yunfan seriously said, "The outcome of the battle only depends on the strength of the two sides. Even if the Lingjian school used many means outside the field and took out hundreds of millions of spirit stones to bet, so what? Could it make the big brother weaker or Luli stronger? Not to mention even the mysterious Sky Mansion thinks that the big brother has a higher chance of winning. Wang Lu is nothing more than sensationalism to sway people's hearts. The reason he showed this kind of skill before the start of the competition is to make us doubt. Psychological attack, he only has this one trick, nothing to be afraid of." Well said. After a cheer, Zhang Zai was no longer confused. He stood up, and an invisible ripple of magical power spread out, causing Hai Yunfan and the others to feel slightly numb. This was clearly the manifestation of the lightning body being pushed to the extreme. Although Zhang Zai's body didn't release even the slightest lightning arc, the 8th layer of the lightning body had already been quietly launched. Although this day of seclusion could not cause his cultivation to increase explosively and reach another level, it allowed Zhang Zai to fully control the magic power he already had, and he could use the violent power of thunder as if it was a spring breeze and rain. Amazing. With this kind of control, he's basically invincible in the foundation establishment stage. Zhao Jiangyuan was both envious and excited. Lu Qiankai also said, I have fought against Lu Li, so I know her ability. She's definitely not Big Brother's opponent. That's right. Although Lu Li's brilliant sword heart is powerful, how could Big Brother be inferior to her? Yi Feifei's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of obsession. Hai Yunfan and Zhang Zai took a deep look at each other. Big Brother, I look forward to your victory. Rest assured. When he turned his head, Hai Yunfan actually showed a deep worry. Even if it was a psychological attack, Wang Lu's 50 million spirit stones were real money, not just used to scare people. Although his big brother was powerful, he had also deeply experienced the magical side of Wang Lu. If he had to put them on the two ends of the scale to compare. While Hai Yunfan's mind was heavy, Zhang Zai had already stood on the stage, quietly waiting for his opponent to appear. Before long, Lu Li also slowly walked onto the stage. The girl was still wearing a gorgeous dress, and her hand was gently holding a fiery red light long sword. Her pretty face still carried that iconic smile, innocent and unaffected, just like the spring scenery. However, the moment she stood still on the cloud platform, Zhang Zai's whole body trembled. He felt an astonishing sword intent coming at him head-on, as if it wanted to pierce through him. His immortal heart that was refined by the Five Thunders Sutra almost couldn't suppress his primordial spirit. Was this the brilliant sword heart? No wonder it was recorded as an immortal-level divine skill by the sect. He obviously had an advantage in magical power level and primordial spirit cultivation base, but he almost couldn't withstand her sword intent. That unparalleled sharpness and piercing ability had gone far beyond the scope of foundation establishment stage. This was a truly evenly matched opponent. Moreover, with this pure sword intent, Zhang Zai didn't think that the opponent's mental defect would affect her combat effectiveness. Although they haven't really fought yet, from her clear eyes, Zhang Zai could see the pure fighting intent, like a mirror that reflected his own eyes. Lu Li's situation was exactly the same as his own. After a day of closed-door training, she had no distractions. Once the fight started, any external noise could not possibly affect her. The only thing that could decide the outcome was strength. However, in front of that all-conquering sharp sword intent, what kind of strength did he need to show in order to win? While he was thinking, the referee elder has announced the start of the fight. Almost at the same time, Lu Li's fiery sword had run through the opponent. However, at the same time, dozens of talismans around Zhang Zai were ignited. Virtual body, flying sword, body burning. All kinds of effects came out at the same time, which was exactly the same as Lu Qiansai's response that day. It perfectly withstood the true fire and sword intent of the fiery sword. The next moment, Lu Li's weak water sword reappeared like the old scene, quietly arriving like a flying immortal from outer space. However, this sword strike could not replicate the victory of the previous fight. The weak water sword was blocked by a gloomy sword for a moment, which only managed to pierce through an afterimage. Zhang Zai's figure was like the wind. Faster than the opponent's sword strike, he soared into the air. Zhao Jiangyuan's limitless sword and Yi Feifei's instantaneous gale were perfectly reproduced. The two swords missed their target, so Lu Li's sword momentum couldn't help but pause. A patch of gray mist came right over his head. Southern Heaven Witchcraft, Biochemical Death. Lu Li possessed the magical method of brilliant sword heart, so her physique was untainted by even a speck of dust. However, under this infamous witchcraft curse, she became a bit slower. Thereupon, the eighth layer of lightning body, Thunder Palm, came right at her. Lu Li's agile footwork was no longer there, so she had to raise her sword to meet it head-on. She sent out a ball of lightning and fire, but her figure slightly swayed. She had already suffered an internal injury. Chapter 164. The fight on the Cloud Tread rooftop made it difficult for many onlookers to breathe. The situation of the fight changed so fast that it was too much for people to take in. What was even more amazing was that, in just a few blinks of an eye, Zhang Zai had already used several of his junior brothers and sisters' unique skills: Lu Qiansai's Spirit Talisman technique, Zhao Jianyuan's Limitless Sword, Yi Feifei's Royal Sky technique, as well as his own Thunder Body, all of which were used freely as if they were at his fingertips. In the astonished eyes of the crowd, several elders and sect leaders from other sects clenched their fists. This was the real card of the eldest brother of the 10,000 Arts sect. 10,000 Methods Comprehension. This was the legendary immortal level method. The cultivator could comprehend all the methods in the world, and all kinds of unique skills were at their fingertips. It was the means of a real immortal. Even the 10,000 Arts sect, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, who could cultivate it, were very rare. Unexpectedly, this Zhang Zai, who was only at the foundation establishment stage, actually managed to cultivate 10,000 methods comprehension. Such a heaven-defying genius was rarely seen in the entire immortal cultivation world for thousands of years. In contrast, the so-called geniuses of their own sect, which they had high hopes for, suddenly seemed dull. They originally thought that with the painstaking efforts of their sect, they might be close to the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. However, what they saw today was simply disheartening. With such a genius leading them, who could shake their position as one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League? Under the brilliant light of 10,000 methods comprehension, Lu Li's brilliant sword heart suddenly became dim. Although it was just a round of fight, but, in the face of an opponent with magical power, primordial spirit strength, and the mastery of 10,000 methods comprehension, unless she was possessed by a true immortal, it was impossible for her to have any chance of winning. In particular, Zhang Zai had thoroughly analyzed the opponent's proudest double swords, and thus had a way to restrain the fiery sword and the weak water sword. Lu Li was indeed formidable. Unfortunately, she encountered an even more formidable opponent. No wonder the odds of the mysterious Sky Mansion are more inclined to Zhang Zai. With this 10,000 methods comprehension, among the people of the same generation, I'm afraid only a few could match him. Perhaps even Xingjing sect's Qianghua is slightly inferior. Not necessarily. Who dares to say that Xingjing sect has revealed all their cards? Before witnessing it with our own eyes today, we never thought that Zhang Zai would be able to cultivate the 10,000 methods comprehension. Since 17 years ago, geniuses have emerged endlessly in the immortal cultivation world. We can't look at things with our old eyes anymore. The few grand cultivators from high-rank sects were calm and collected. Over the past 17 years, there had been many talented cultivators in the immortal cultivation world, and they all had a certain amount of resources in their hands. Moreover, speaking of which, geniuses. Only geniuses who had matured were frightening. No matter how talented a foundation establishment cultivator was, they still couldn't enter the eyes of a nascent soul or deity transformation cultivator. But no matter what, I'm afraid the outcome of this round has already been decided. A certain brat who gambled so much is probably going to suffer a great loss. However, just as everyone was making their judgment on the outcome of this battle, they heard a burst of light laughter from the cloud platform. Lu Li's body slightly swayed. Blood even flowed out from the corner of her mouth, but her face was filled with an extremely joyful smile. It was the joy of meeting one's match. Just as people were curious about how Lu Li would contend against the 10,000 methods comprehension in a situation where both of her swords were sealed, the girl spread out her hands, and from her sleeves flew out 1, 2, 3, 12 flying swords hovered around her body. Being watched by countless pairs of horrified eyes, Lu Li's smile became more and more cheerful, as if she was asking a simple question. Who said that Lu Li would use 2 swords? The 12 flying swords, each carrying a different attribute of immortal spirit aura, turned into 12 rainbow lights and soared into the sky. Who said that Lu Li could only ride her sword in close combat? The power of any one of the 12 flying rainbows was comparable to Yi Feifei's red jade heavenly fire. When the 12 of them merged into one, the power was far superior. Even some of the gold core elders of the lower rank sects were frightened. The explosive power of the brilliant sword heart was pushed to the extreme in an instant. However, Zhang Zai didn't waver in the slightest. The 8th level of the lightning battle physique allowed him to instantly transform into a ball of lightning, and then a slender and tough lightning whip swiftly lashed out in an attempt to bind the 12 rays of light. How sharp was the brilliant sword heart! The 12 flying swords flashed and dispersed the long whip extended by the thunder body, but the scattered thunder power also disrupted the sword momentum. The lightning power innately had the ability to control the flying swords that were made of metal essence. Zhang Zai made full use of this to buy himself a negligible amount of time. Although the time was short, the lightning body's natural lightning speed allowed him to take this opportunity to get away from the threatening range of the flying swords. People couldn't compete with flying swords in terms of speed. Even if the lightning body and the lightning body were superimposed, it was impossible for them to be faster than the flying swords. However, as long as he took advantage of the moment when the 12 flying swords paused to slightly open up the distance, he had too many means to deal with this kind of direct attack. As long as he could buy himself a little bit of time, he didn't need to entangle himself with these 12 flying swords. The other side had released all the flying swords, but they forgot that no matter how strong the flying swords were, they still had a weakness: their master. As long as he could destroy Lu Li's body with the annihilation thunder, what would be the use of these 12 swords of brilliant sword heart? In his jade mansion, the immortal heart that could suppress the 5 thunders crazily rotated. When he was fighting with all his strength, Zhang Zai had never been able to stay calm. To suppress the 5 thunders, the method of forgetting emotion would never be useful. Only a fiercer temperament could control the thunder. However, no matter how extreme the intensity was, it didn't make him completely crazy. On the contrary, his calculation would be faster and more accurate. The various knowledge that he learned in the 10,000 Arts sect would lead him to obtain the greatest result with the least amount of power, and to exchange the greatest power for the absolute victory. However, just as he had deduced more than 300 changes and was ready to launch the lightning body, the scattered rainbow light in the air suddenly converged into one. The light from the 9 flying swords converged into a rainbow. Lu Li, who was wearing a 7-colored dress, faced Zhang Zai's astonished gaze, holding a flying sword in each of her hands, and then swung it head-on. In his field of vision, the flying swords cut off that brilliant smiling face, and the unparalleled sword chi came head-on, which couldn't be avoided or blocked. The complex model that was constructed in his mind collapsed. In any case, Zhang Zai didn't expect that Lu Li's sword cultivation base had already reached the realm of one with the sword. However, the result of his calculation was too precise. Once the calculation was wrong, then. Facing the sword chi stimulated by brilliant sword heart, Zhang Zai didn't show any weakness. Dozens of talismans that he had prepared for a long time, as his trump card, were suddenly ignited, which turned into a huge and temporary force that poured into his jade mansion. His lightning body suddenly burst out with unprecedented light. Let's die together. On the cloud tread rooftop, an astonishing explosion swept the audience. The clouds fiercely rolled, as if they were ravaged by a huge force. Under the cover of sound and light, the roaring magical power left a tragic mark on the thick layer of clouds. The core of the clouds was even directly pierced through with numerous holes. Under the platform, people have been shocked speechless by this terrifying fight. From the beginning to the end of the fight between Lu Li and Zhang Zai, only a few breaths of time had passed, yet the power, skill, and wisdom that they displayed were far beyond imagination. People thought that the 10,000 methods comprehension was already an unexpected surprise today. However, when Lu Li successively summoned out 12 flying swords, and even used the one with the sword divine skill, even the 10,000 methods comprehension, this immortal level technique, was overshadowed. How powerful was this naive and unaffected cultivator girl, who was even sighed and called a fool by many people? How could a mere Lingjian school, the last of the 5 uniques, cultivate such a powerful cultivator? Although at present, she was just a low-level foundation establishment cultivator, just starting on the path of immortal cultivation, but the cultivators present asked themselves, if their cultivation base was limited to foundation establishment. No, even if it was shoot on stage, what was the chance of winning? He was a monster through and through. When the aftermath of the fight on the cloud-tread rooftop slowly settled down, the hearts of the audience also slowly fell down from the high place. It was really a wonderful match. However, the result was really interesting. At the last moment, Zhang Zai superimposed the Annihilation Thunder and Talisman technique, and the destructive power of the explosion has steadily reached the level of King Pill. Although he himself could not escape, Lu Li, who was quite close to him, was also a dead end. Of course, there were Yuanying deity stage referees on duty, so no one would really die, but the corresponding judgment would not be wrong. Mutual destruction. This was a draw. While sighing at this result, many people also thought of one thing. Under the platform, the mysterious sky mansion was the banker. How would it be calculated? Although there was also a draw option, not many people actually bet on it. After all, in this kind of arena, where they didn't need to worry about life and death, the cultivators' fight was more intense, so it was less likely to have a draw. Then, what would a certain local tycoon who gambled 50 million feel? Idiot. Facing the gradually gathered eyes, Wang Lu snorted in ridicule and then pointed at the platform. The outcome has been decided. On the rooftop, as the clouds gradually stabilized, a golden light appeared. In the middle of the golden light, Zhang Zai was quietly lying in mid-air, unconscious. This layer of golden light was the spell cast by the referee elder. Once there was a life-threatening danger, it would immediately be activated. For these young cultivators, it could be called as an absolute defense, saving their lives. However, the flash of golden light also meant the defeat of the fight. In their field of vision, there was only Zhang Zai's golden light. Lu Li was nowhere to be seen. Ah, there she is. On the edge of the cloud platform, Lu Li, who was dressed in a colorful dress, smiled. The girl who had retracted her sword intent appeared quite inconspicuous on the cloud platform. However, compared to the unconscious Zhang Zai, the still lively Lu Li simply shone brightly. How could this be? Under that terrifying annihilation thunder, how did Lu Li protect herself? Brilliant sword heart had never been known for defense. Of course, among the people present, the great cultivators with profound cultivation base had already seen through the trick, but they didn't say a word. However, the disciples with insufficient cultivation base couldn't figure out the reason behind it. That's why I said you guys are stupid. Can't you do addition and subtraction? 9 swords combined into 1, and then divided into 2 swords. What is 9 plus 2? How many flying swords did she summon? With this kind of brain, you still have the nerve to shout, kick the mathematics out of the Tin Cloud Hall? With that, Wang Lu stood up and left the rest area. His face was unusually dignified. Chapter 165. Hey, why do you look constipated? Did you eat too much guanin clay? At the Spirit Creek town under the Spirit Sword Mountain, the lady boss of the Rue family inn was always so hospitable. And the solemn-looking guest also knowingly replied, "Idiot, get lost." The lady boss was suddenly inexplicably surprised. "Guest, are you talking human language just now? I don't understand you at all." The guest was too lazy to pay attention to her nonsense. He went straight to the counter and laid out 9 copper coins. 2 bowls of wine, a stack of fennel beans, plus a pot of braised pork, a bowl of spicy soup, a tray of soup dumplings, and, hey, you just gave me 9 copper coins, okay? Although it was noisy, not long after, the table was filled with all kinds of dishes. Although most of them were just home-cooked dishes, they were cooked by the lady boss and had a different taste. Tell me, why do you look so serious, as if you've been raped? TSK Wang Lu took a sip of wine and said, "The semi-final is over." "Oh, you won or lost?" Wang Lu sneered. "Stupid question. With my IQ and means, how could I lose? Although I always feel that there's a problem with your reason for winning, let's put it aside for the time being. Since you've won, what are you worried about? The final is a bit troublesome." Wang Lu calmly said, although I've already guessed that Lu Li would win, I didn't expect her to be so strong. The lady boss indifferently smiled. Of course she's strong. She entered the sect earlier than you, and her cultivation time is longer than yours. Moreover, she doesn't have a pain in the ass spirit root that drags her down. She's treated as a genuine successor disciple, so it would be strange if she's not strong. In any case, you've stumbled all the way to the final, so you should just give up. No one can say anything about it. It's a big deal, so I have no way to retreat. The lady boss was curious. It's a big deal? You also know that this competition is a competition between Lingjian School and 10,000 Arts Sect. Internally, it's a competition for the lead disciple. According to the previous rules, as long as you win the final victory, you can enjoy at least 10 years of lead disciple authority. Otherwise, you can only enjoy the treatment of the honorary lead disciple, which is quite different from the genuine one. And then? The authority of the chief disciple is very important to me. Wang Lu said, according to the explanation of the chief disciple of the Heavenly Sword Hall, the chief disciple of a sect has more privileges than a true disciple. One of the most important privileges is the immunity against the master. To put it simply, the chief disciple of a sect is under the direct control of the sect master and is not restricted by the sect master. The lady boss was smart and immediately understood. Wang Wu can't control you, right? It's only the duty of a master, but not the authority of a master. What should be taught still needs to be taught, but you can't order me around as a master. Isn't that great? The lady boss asked. Anyway, you don't usually treat her as your master. What's the difference between having or not having this immunity? Of course I have. Usually, I'm not respectful to Wang Wu because she herself doesn't care whether I'm respectful or not. If I insist on doing things according to the sect's rules, I will definitely be pranked by the old virgin Fang He. The lady boss was even more confused. What does Wang Wu want to do to you? I think she's actually very good to you. It's indeed good. Therefore, although it's not obvious, I really treat her as my master. However, this harmonious relationship between master and disciple has been greatly shaken. Under the temptation of money, Wang Wu has a tendency to go crazy. The temptation of money? Wang Lu said, I just made a windfall, earning more than 40 million spirit stones, so, what the, more than 40 million spirit stones? The lady boss was so shocked that she slapped the table. Big local tycoon. Let's be friends, okay? See, the power of money can make women crazy. Even Sister Ling is not immune, so do I need to say anything about my master? Wang Lu sighed, took a bite of food, and drank a mouthful of wine. You can guess what cruel things she did to me. The lady boss thought for a moment. Did she torture you? Do you think I'm afraid of torture? Then, did she threaten you not to teach me the follow-up method of non-phase method? At worst, I'll create it myself. With her IQ, she can create her own non-phase method, so naturally, I can do it. Letting her teach me is nothing more than saving me some trouble. I can't think of anything else. I've never been able to predict the lower limit of your non-phase peak. Wang Lu smiled wryly. I also can't predict it. She proposed to me. Puff. The lady boss sprayed out the wine that she just drank. She proposed to you. Yes, in order to divide my property. Wang Lu was extremely helpless. Although I clearly refused her, she soon planned to use her master's privilege to arrange a marriage. Moreover, with her personality, I'm worried that she would take advantage of my closed-door training to forcibly defile me. What the, forcibly defile? The lady boss felt that her worldview had once again been refreshed. She could not help but raise her glass to express her admiration. You non-phase peak master and disciple are really a perfect match. In short, in order to keep my innocence, I had to make a difficult choice. Castrate yourself? Puff. This time, it was Wang Lu's turn to spurt out his wine. Sister Ling, your lower limit is a lot deeper. One who keeps close to ink will be stained black. In short, what exactly did you do? Wang Lu said, I just won the money plus the principal, all of it on the outcome of the next match. Of course, according to the rules, I can only bet on my own win, temporarily putting an end to her thoughts. Such a large amount of money, aren't you afraid that there will be a problem? If you don't dare to accept this bet, then there's no need to open the mysterious Sky Mansion. Wang Lu said, for the next match, the mysterious Sky Mansion's interest is quite high. After seeing Lu Li's brilliant sword heart, there are many people who are willing to bet on her. Oh, in short, now you have to win. Yes, if you lose, not only would you lose your face in the Lingjian school, you would also be pointed at as the disgrace of the successor disciple. Moreover, you would instantly turn from a local tycoon into a poor ghost, a life worse than death. The lady boss nodded in agreement. I understand very well. Since more than 5 years ago, when I earned 10 million silvers a day, alas, these past few years have been really hard. Wang Lu said, in addition, I also promise that as long as I can win, I will give half of the money to Wang Wu. Right now, she and I have a common interest, so I only need to wholeheartedly seek victory. I don't need to worry about being tarnished at night. It feels like a very sad master-disciple relationship. Oh, after this meal, I'm going to do the hell training. There are still 2 days before the final, so the outcome will be decided in this match. I came to say hello in advance. If Sister Ling has any super awesome card in your hand, quickly show it to me, it's still not too late. *T, what card do I have? For example, the dried sweet potato that has been stored for many years, the secret treasure that has been guarded for a long time, waiting for a fated person, or the peerless divine method that has been cultivated for many years, specially used to impart to others. Do you have any of these? Eat your meal. After leaving the Ru family and in disappointment, Wang Lu returned to the non-phase peak. There was no more time to delay. After witnessing Lu Li's brilliant sword heart, Wang Lu was very clear that he had no chance of winning. Although by relying on various means, he had successively defeated the powerful Zhao Jiangyuan and Yi Feifei, but Lu Li was a completely different level of opponent. Not only did she have unparalleled explosive power, the ever-changing human sword unity technique, but she also had a spotless brilliant sword heart. In many people's eyes, Lu Li was a naive fool. She was simple-minded, ignorant of worldly affairs, and her brain seemed to be lacking a brain. She could always make stupid actions that people didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Moreover, she simply couldn't be corrected. This point, during the preparation period for the exchange between the two sects, Wang Lu has already done a test. At that time, he threw a book called Peerless God Sword Record on the path that Lu Li must pass. There was a trap in the book that could spray out a strong knockout drug. The drug's efficacy was carefully calculated according to Lu Li's physique. Even if she had a clear physique, she still wouldn't be immune. For most people with normal intelligence, they wouldn't touch this kind of obvious trap. As a result, when Lu Li saw this book, she happily jumped up and down. Peerless God Sword Record. I want to see it, I want to see it. Then she opened the book, and a pink mist sprayed all over her face. The girl swayed a few times and then fell to the ground. After waking up, Lu Li was severely scolded by her master Zhou Ming. Remember, this so-called sword record in the middle of the road is simply a trap. Never touch it in the future. Lu Li earnestly nodded, indicating that she firmly remembered it. Thereupon, Wang Lu wrote another book called No Trap Peerless God Sword Record and threw it on the road. Seeing it, Lu Li pondered for a moment and said, Master said, I must never touch a sword record with a trap. However, since there's no trap in this book, then there's no problem. Then the girl resolutely opened the book. Through that test, Wang Lu fully understood the level of Lu Li's intelligence. If he used comprehensive means, he had too many ways to defeat his opponent. However, after witnessing the fight between Lu Li and Zhang Zai, he knew that in the arena, tricks were meaningless. That day, She called out the 12 flying swords and used 11 of them to force Zhang Zai into a desperate situation, forcing him to use the annihilation thunder to perish together with him. As for the remaining flying sword, she had already guided it to a safe place. At the moment of Zhang Zai's self-explosion, she used the method of human sword unity to successfully transform the flying sword into a safe place, thus avoiding the impact of the self-explosion. Although the tactic was simple, to be arranged in a flash, how could it be possible for a brainless person to do it? Lu Li was not stupid. At least in the fight, she was more astute than the vast majority of people. Her brilliant sword heart eliminated all distracting thoughts and cut off all interference. Her sword heart pointed straight to the way to victory, and her temperament was almost flawless. Wang Lu's most proficient psychological attack could be used to toy with Lu Li like a pet dog. However, once Lu Li entered the fighting state, psychological attack would be meaningless. In the final, the only way to win was by true ability, there was no shortcut. So, are you ready for the special hell training, my beloved disciple? On the non-phase peak, a woman in white sneered. Next to her, the tall seventh elder, Ao Guanhai, nodded toward Wang Lu. Chapter 166. Brilliant sword heart is not an invincible method, its shortcomings and advantages are equally prominent. Although its attack power is strong, its defensive power is insufficient. Therefore, the basic idea of the 10,000 art sex kids is not wrong. However, their mistake is that they underestimated the ever-changing brilliant sword heart. They were anxious for quick results, vainly trying to determine the outcome in the first round. As a result, they were caught off guard by that little girl Lu Li. The little girl actually doesn't have that complicated mind. It's just that her intuition told her how to win, so she did it. However, the 10,000 art sex waste can't even defeat the little girl's intuition. On the non-phase peak, the fifth elder, who was dressed in white as usual, revealed a rare serious expression. Actually, from another point of view, they are not far from victory. The key to determine the outcome is whether they can withstand the full power of little Lu Li's sword. If Lu Qiankai can withstand the weak water sword, the two evil ghost talismans are enough to suppress the opponent. And if Zhang Zai can withstand the combined attack of the 12 flying swords, and then use the annihilation thunder to hurt the enemy instead of exploding himself, he can also win. Unfortunately, they knew that they could not withstand Lu Li's brilliant sword heart, so they tried every possible way to hide, to escape, and to resort to trickery, and then, little Wang Lu, with so many martyrs dying in front of you, you should know what to do, right? Wang Lu said, give up the wishful thinking and directly withstand the pressure of the brilliant sword heart. However, now it seems like a head-on confrontation is simply courting death. Even without the 12 flying swords, a single fiery sword can break my sword defense. This non-phase method is really not good enough. Damn, it's obviously because your cultivation base is not enough, don't slander the cultivation method. I'm a stage lower than senior brother Zhou Ming, but I'm not afraid of him. Right now, your biggest problem is that your foundation is too weak, and your magical power level is too low. If your cultivation base is similar to Lu Li, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Wang Lu said, then the most urgent thing is to improve your cultivation base, so you called seventh uncle? Ao Guanhai shook his head and said, I do have quite a few medicinal pills to raise cultivation, but wanting to make my cultivation advance by leaps and bounds in a short 2 days, this is really not easy. No matter how strong the medicinal pill is, the medicinal effects need a process to take effect. Moreover, forcefully increasing one's cultivation with the power of medicinal pills might cause one's foundation to become unstable. Wang Lu didn't care about this at all. My cultivation is unstable after a sudden attack. I'm born with a poor balance. You can rest assured and use the medicine. It's best if I can get the king pill quickly. His master sneered, instant king pill? Sure, the sky demon disintegration pill. After consuming it, one will have the cultivation of the king pill for the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. After the effects of the pill wear off, one's body will explode and one's soul will scatter. Do you want one? Listen, you only have 2 days, so the power of the elixir is essential. However, you can't expect to stand on the same platform as Luli with just 1 or 2 elixirs. As a successor disciple, she has eaten a lot of elixirs. Therefore, you can only take the evil path. However, since it's an evil path, there will definitely be side effects. You have to consider it carefully. Master Wang Wu's expression was unusually serious, which made Wang Lu feel quite unaccustomed. Tell me about it. Big Heart Demon Oath. His master coldly said the answer, make an exchange with the Big Heart Demon Oath. Pay the price in exchange for the promotion of strength. Big Heart Demon Oath can be used like this? Wang Lu was surprised. This was not a cult sacrifice. Even if he had the intention to make a deal, he had to have a trading partner. Pay the price in exchange for strength, but who would provide the strength? How do I make the oath? It's very simple. You swear that, from now on, you will never take the initiative to hurt people with the immortal cultivation method. Wang Lu immediately frowned. Won't hurt people with the immortal cultivation method? Yes, to the extreme. Even if the enemy who killed your father is standing in front of you, you must not use the immortal cultivation method to inflict any harm. Otherwise, the heart demon will enter your body, and your primordial spirit will collapse. Wang Lu seemed to be lost in thought. With his excellent perception of immortal cultivation, he immediately understood the key point. Well, using this extreme oath to impose on yourself, forcing yourself to focus on defense, thereby improving your defensive ability? Although I still can't understand the specific operation principle, in general, it's a good deal. Non-phase method originally has no offensive power. Who said there's no offensive power? His master lightly interrupted, you have to use your brain when you speak. Wang Lu was startled, but then he immediately realized. So you've also made the oath. Because of the constraint of the Big Heart Demon Oath, you don't have the means to attack. Therefore, later on, non-phase method continued to focus on defense, because developing an offensive method simply doesn't make sense. Yes, it's not that non-phase method can't hurt people. In fact, after the non-phase sword bone helped you break the shackles of the spirit root, theoretically, you can already cultivate a method with strong offensive power. And when you've successfully reached the foundation establishment stage, your method can also be rounded and natural. Non-phase method can be considered as a good inclusive platform. With your aptitude and perception, it's not impossible for you to cultivate those amazingly powerful immortal cultivation method in the sect. When the time comes, being invincible like Luli is not just a delusion. Wang Lu chuckled. Master, you don't have to use these words to test me. Not to mention others, even if I now cultivate brilliant sword heart, can it let me win in 2 days? Yes, it's good that you have this awareness. With your intelligence, you should be able to clearly understand how much you will sacrifice once the oath is established. You and I are different. You have a choice, there's no need to make yourself so passive. And with Wang Lu's intelligence, he immediately realized that there was a considerable secret behind his master's non-phase method. You didn't have a choice in the past? Speaking of which, when I used the nameless sword, indeed. Okay, we'll have time to talk about my gossip later. Now, tell me your choice first. Wang Lu pondered for a moment. Once the oath is established, you can't take the initiative to hurt people. But can the blade armor be used? In theory, the nameless sword can't be used. The Big Heart Demon Oath can't be played with words. However, with your temperament, you shouldn't be restricted by the oath. But the nameless sword is your only means. His master smiled. Of course, if you use your brain, there's also a flexible way. At least, you can curse people. Verbal violence is not restricted. Since there's still room for flexibility, then there's no need to hesitate. Let me take the oath. Okay. Junior brother, bring me the spirit congealing drug. For the time being, let this kid's primordial spirit condense into an illusory body and make the Big Heart Demon Oath. The Big Heart Demon Oath was, in theory, a skill that could only be used by shoot-on stage or higher-level cultivators. However, for the 5 unique sect, there were always ways to make an exception. Although the reputation of the spirit-congealing drug was not that great, its effect was enough to be ranked as a high-rank panacea. After swallowing the spirit-congealing drug, Wang Lu suddenly felt that his mind was filled with light. His primordial spirit quickly condensed into an illusory body, and then continued to turn into a real body until it reached the half-illusory half-real state. According to the standard of Lingjian school, this was the strength of the primordial spirit of a shoot-on stage cultivator. Although the effect could only last for less than a breath, it was more than enough to make the Big Heart Demon Oath. The Big Heart Demon Oath was not difficult to make. Previously, his master had explained the key points, and Wang Lu had also practiced it several times. At this time, he easily operated the power of his primordial spirit, which was 100 times more powerful than before, and successfully condensed the oath. Although the oath was named after the Big Heart Demon Oath, when he made the oath, his primordial spirit in his inner mansion was calm. Only a circle of colorless and invisible ripples spread out from the center of his jade mansion, sweeping through all living things in his jade mansion, and then disappeared at the edge. During this period, there was neither the interference of the Big Heart Demon Oath, nor any other strange phenomenon. However, Wang Lu was very clear that after the oath was established, if he really dared to violate it, then lightning and thunder, and the wailing of hundreds of ghosts would be considered as light punishment. Basically, he would die without a doubt. After the oath was made, Wang Lu slowly opened his eyes. Just now, when his primordial spirit bloomed, the feeling that everything was under his control had dissipated, but the effect of the oath remained, engraved in his inner mansion, his body, his primordial spirit, and everywhere else. As Wang Lu moved his body, the bones all over his body issued a crackling sound, and his whole body had undergone considerable changes. After that, you still have 2 days to digest the benefits brought to you by the Big Heart Demon Oath. At the same time, you have to change your tactics. From now on, any initiative to attack must be absolutely prohibited. Generally speaking, if a genuine shoot-on stage cultivator makes an oath, his primordial spirit is enough to firmly restrain his own actions. However, if you use the power of medicinal pills, there is a risk of accident. But for you, it should not be a problem, right? Wang Lu nodded his head. Rest assured, the quality of a professional adventurer is here. Good, then let's start the next round, actual combat. As soon as his voice fell, the seventh uncle's blue sea-tide sword directly chopped at him. Time was limited, and Ao Guanhai, who knew the style of the non-phase peak, did not waste any time. Moreover, Wang Lu seemed to be prepared. The sword of Mount Kun came out and blocked the attack of his martial uncle. Oh! The moment the two swords collided, Wang Lu was surprised. His martial uncle, of course, did not go all out, but the power of this sword strike was still at the level of shoot-on stage. If it were in the past, he would have to suffer some internal injuries to withstand it. But now, he only felt that his whole body was shaken. Unexpectedly, in such a short period of time, the Big Heart Demon Oath had already begun to play a miraculous effect. Don't be too happy, this sword strike is only 50% of Lu Li's level. In the next 2 days, you still have a lot of work to do. The seventh elder sighed. The sword in his hand moved again, and this time, the power was even higher. Ha ha ha, good. Wang Lu did not show any weakness. Not only did he successfully block the attack with the sword of Mount Kun, he also brazenly shook the sword bone, urging the nameless sword to return the damage. Such a fierce move surprised the seventh elder. Wang Lu, this child, has just made the Big Heart Demon Oath, so he should be extra careful against this kind of damage-returning skill. Yet, he actually dared to make his move. However, if he didn't have this kind of temperament, there was no need to fight in 2 days' time. It would be better to admit defeat in advance. Lu Li's fierceness was difficult to understand for those who haven't personally fought against her. In these 2 days, even if Wang Lu carried out the special training with this kind of life-risking mentality, his odds of winning were still no more than 30%. And this was the seventh elder's infinitely optimistic estimate. After all, there was a gap of several years between Wang Lu and Lu Li's cultivation time. And for these peerless geniuses, several years of time was enough to open an insurmountable gap. Humph. Before long, Wang Lu was shaken by the blue tide sword and suffered an internal injury. However, this was just the beginning. Damn it, I'm bleeding from playing with a black uncle. How unlucky. Chapter 167. Eldest brother, drink a cup of water. While Wang Lu was struggling in his hellish special training, inside the pink house of the Spirit Pool Peak, the atmosphere of the 10,000 Art Sect exchange team was bleak. Zhang Zai's defeat in the semi-final was beyond everyone's expectation. The rare talent that was regarded as the hope of the sect for the next hundreds of years actually lost. He lost to a silly, adorable girl whose cultivation time was similar to his, yet her background was not as good as his. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one would believe it. The defeat in this fight had brought a devastating blow to the morale of the disciples of the 10,000 Art Sect. They couldn't even remember how they returned to the pink house from the Cloud Tread rooftop. They only remembered that when they came back to their senses, the faces of the 5 Marshall brothers were ashen and speechless. In the end, Hai Yunfan's mentality was the best. After a sigh, he even forgot about his own tragic loss of hundreds of thousands of spirit stones and acted as the team's inspiration. He was not in a hurry to discuss the exciting yet tragic battle. Instead, he poured a cup of hot water for each of his senior brothers and senior sisters, fetched a few plates of snacks, and chatted about some trivial matters to ease the atmosphere. However, the effect was not very good. Everyone seemed to have suffered too much of a blow, and it was no longer possible for simple methods to work. And just as Hai Yunfan was considering whether or not to ask for help, he heard his eldest brother open his mouth. This time, I have failed everyone. Zhang Zai's voice was heavy, but it still had the power to influence people's hearts. Yi Feifei and the others who were in a daze were awakened. I lost wholeheartedly. The opponent's strength is stronger than me, so I have nothing to say when I lose in the fight. In the past few years, I've been complacent in the sect, thinking that although the world is big, there are only a few who can be called my opponent. I'm really a frog in a well. While saying that, Zhang Zai shook his head at his junior brothers and sisters who tried to comfort him. After the fight, I have repeatedly deduced over 100 times in my mind. Even if Lu Li doesn't come up with a new card, relying solely on her current ability, in 100 fights, I can only win about 10 at most. There's a real gap between the two sides. I really don't know how she practices. Actually, there was no need for Zhang Zai to say all this. As long as one witnessed the fight, he or she could see that Lu Li's strength was actually a notch higher than her opponent's. Her ever-changing brilliant sword heart perfectly covered the lack of defense. Moreover, during the fight, her mind was clear, unaffected by any interference, simply impeccable. Although Zhang Zai was only one move away from losing, the distance of this one move was real and not something that could be attributed to luck. However, realizing this actually made people even more discouraged. Everyone came here with the mentality of crushing the opponent, but now, they were crushed on the stage. Their eldest brother even gave up on himself. For a time, even the pride of the 10,000 Art Sect that was imprinted in their bones was shaken. They originally thought that this generation of disciples was enough to stand at the top of the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, but now they saw that there were still people at the top. It was as if they saw an unknown sky that they had never thought of, which made them fearful. However, at this moment, Zhang Zai revealed a smile that reassured his junior brothers and sisters. It was the smile that whenever they encountered difficulties in the immortal cultivation sect, as the eldest brother, he would bravely step forward and reveal that smile. 10,000 Art Sect is not an arrogant and lawless barbaric sect. We are scholars, and what is the academic principle? His junior brothers subconsciously answered, to discover the unknown, to understand the unknown, to predict the unknown. That's right. Therefore, for those who are stronger than us, we should hold an exploratory attitude and take the initiative to learn and improve ourselves. Therefore, I'm going to look for Luli to exchange her experience in immortal cultivation. Junior brothers and sisters, have a good rest. Zhang Zai said with a sinking voice, turned into a flash of lightning, and went toward the direction of the brilliant peak, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded disciples. Zhang Zai rode the flash of lightning straight toward the brilliant peak. However, halfway there, Zhang Zai's complexion changed. In front of him, his master Yuan Chaoyan's magical power fluctuation faintly came, blocking his way. This was his master's silent reminder that this road was blocked. Zhang Zai was full of annoyance, thinking, Master is actually at the brilliant peak. Moreover, why would he stop me? This is such a good opportunity to learn and exchange. As the master, how could he stop his disciples' sincere desire to learn? On the other side, on the brilliant peak, Yuan Chaoyan shook his head and smiled. I've let the several elders see my good-for-nothing disciple. In front of him were the Lingjian school's second elder Lu Xian, fourth elder Zhou Ming, and ninth elder Hua Yun. After the two semi-finals, the 10,000 arts sect's defeat was already set in stone. Their original arrogance suddenly vanished, and the matter of being asked by the Xingjing sect naturally never happened. The exchange between the two sects was finally on the right track. Yuan Chaoyan's trip to the brilliant peak was also a goodwill gesture on behalf of the sect, although he himself was also angry. Among the three elders, only he had enough EQ to handle this situation. If it were the other two, they would definitely fight with someone on the brilliant peak. The topic of Yuan Chaoyan's exchange was the sect's education of their disciples. Once they talked about it, Yuan Chaoyan found out that he had indeed underestimated the Lingjian school. These elders might not have the same cultivation base as him, but in terms of educating their disciples, they each had their own strengths, which benefited him a lot. Moreover, he had to admit that their attitude was better than his. Lu Xian said, Elder Yuan is too modest. Zhang Zai, that child, has only cultivated for 8 years, yet he has already comprehended the 10,000 methods comprehension technique and cultivated the immortal level method 5 Thunder Sutra to this level. His aptitude and perception are very few in the present age. The sect indeed has high hopes for him. Since that event 17 years ago, the 9 regions has seen an endless stream of immortal cultivation geniuses. However, there are only a few who can truly lead the future of the 5 uniques. Our 10,000 arts sect is already quite fortunate to have Zhang Zai, but we didn't expect that the harvest of your Lingjian school is even higher than ours. Yuan Chaoyan said with some envy, right now, Lingjian school is ranked last among the top 5 sects, but with such a rare talent like Luli, after 1 year, it should be able to advance 1 or 2 places. The several elders of Spirit Sword sect didn't comment on Yuan Chaoyan's so-called ranking last among the 5 uniques. However, Zhou Ming said, that child Luli, although her aptitude and perception are good, she doesn't have the temperament to take on big responsibilities. If we really put the future of the sect on her, I'm afraid Lingjian school will be finished in 100 years. Master, Lingjian school will be finished? While speaking, Luli, who was wearing a long skirt, floated over. Her big eyes flashed with naivety. Then what about the future meals? Zhou Ming snappily scolded, You idiot, you only know how to eat. Go back and practice your flying sword incarnation for another 2 hours. You're not allowed to come back before we finish talking. The girl's small face immediately drooped. Oh, I know. After dealing with Luli, Zhou Ming wryly smiled. I've let Elder Yuan see a joke. Yuan Chaoyan, with a face full of envy, looked at Luli's receding back. Pure heart, whole body like colored glass. With this kind of aptitude, no wonder she can inherit the ancient inheritance. However, I think this brilliant sword heart method is also very different from the ancient inheritance. The rumored several weaknesses of brilliant sword heart have been cleverly made up. Zhou Ming smiled but didn't say anything. Yuan Xiaoyan then said, however, I understand what Elder Zhou said. With such a temperament, she can certainly advance triumphantly on the immortal cultivation path, but as a sect leader, she's incompetent. So, does your sect plan to seriously cultivate Wang Lu? When mentioning Wang Lu, the several elders' complexion became somewhat unnatural. Yuan Xiaoyan said, compared to Lu Li, Wang Lu is indeed quick-witted and ever-changing, but his method is, after all, not the right path. Moreover, his cultivation base is also a lot worse. Although the first 2 times he won by a fluke, in all fairness, that kind of method that simply emphasizes defense and survival is not the right path, right? The several elders' complexion became even more strange. The more Yuan Xiaoyan said, the more curious he became. I heard that Wang Lu's master is from Non-Phase Peak, but the master of Non-Phase Peak only has King Pill cultivation base. I think, since Wang Lu has such a strong point, even if his immortal cultivation qualification is not the best, there's no need to hand him over to a good-for-nothing master, right? Not to mention Wang Lu's talent is outstanding, and later on, he can take on great responsibility. Humph, you're the good-for-nothing. Hearing Yuan Xiaoyan slandering her senior sister, the 9th elder Hua Yun was immediately annoyed. No matter what, you're also one of the elders of the 5 uniques. How could you look at people based on their cultivation base? What's wrong with King Pill? I'll still beat you until you look for your teeth on the ground. Yuan Xiaoyan was annoyed, but when he saw Hua Yun's face, which was full of anger but didn't lose its outstanding beauty, his anger immediately dissipated. Perhaps that woman in white really has some special skill that I can't see? However, blindly pursuing defense in order to survive was too vexing. Even in the 10,000 Arts sect, the pure defensive method has always been unpopular. Perhaps the 5th elder really had a way to resist the spell of a deity stage elder with King Pill cultivation base, but to say that she could beat him until he looked for his teeth on the ground was a joke. Not to mention that although the 9 regions was big, who dared to say that their defense was foolproof? One day, someone would find a flaw, and when that time came, there would be no room for mediation, so why bother? It was a pity that Wang Lu, that child, regardless of his spirit root qualification, with his perception alone, it was enough to make Yuan Xiaoyan cherish his talent. But now, he had embarked on an evil path. If he hadn't obtained the successor disciple status, he really wanted to poach him into the 10,000 Arts sect. Not to mention, in the 10,000 Arts sect, whether it was the disciples or the elders, they were generally weak in dealing with people. Thus, they really needed a quick-witted and ever-changing person. Currently, the sect leader was more optimistic about Hai Yunfan, but compared with Wang Lu, Hai Yunfan seemed to be lacking a bit. However, the strange thing was, it was said that not long ago, Wang Lu looked for the people of the mysterious Sky Mansion to make a bet on himself, yet he was so confident that he could win. The people of the mysterious Sky Mansion were not vegetarians. If they wanted to play tricks, even the disciples of the 5 uniques couldn't afford the consequences. What exactly was he thinking? With doubts in his heart, Yuan Xiaoyan took the opportunity to ask. Hua Yin replied, "We don't know, but that kid Wang Lu would certainly not let himself suffer a loss. After all, he is the disciple of senior sister." Yuan Xiaoyan couldn't help but ask, "He's just a high-level qi cultivating stage, could he be stronger than Lu Li?" Hua Yin said, "In theory, certainly not, but after all, he is Wang Lu. Against him, little Lu Li is simply not enough." "Oh, 4th senior brother, don't mind me." Zhou Ming wryly smiled. "To be honest, I don't have enough confidence in Lu Li. If 5th junior sister also taught that trick to Wang Lu, Lu Li, that idiot, would really be in danger this time." Hua Yin said, "That can't be, right? Isn't it true that the primordial spirit has to be half real and half virtual to use? Isn't Wang Lu still far from that? Moreover, senior sister said that only she can use that trick, so other people don't even need to try it. However, if it's Wang Lu, he might be an exception. His temperament is similar to senior sister's, so it's hard to estimate." Yuan Xiaoyan became more and more confused. primordial spirit is half real and half virtual? What's the point of making a big heart demon oath? But what's the use of making a big heart demon oath? Although the big heart demon oath has the effect of equivalent trade, the stronger the binding force, the more valuable the sacrifice, and the greater the compensation. Moreover, this kind of compensation is mostly permanent, so the short-term effect is limited. To make up for the difference in strength between the two sides in 2 days, how strong would the oath be? I'm afraid it would affect the normal action. Moreover, the big heart demon oath can't be played with words. The person who made the oath must recognize his own sacrifice in order to get the compensation. For example, if someone vowed to never speak again in his life, but still spoke, and then explained to himself, "I'm not going to speak, I'm just going to make some syllables." As for how these syllables are combined, it's the listener's business, and it has nothing to do with me. Congratulations, the next moment, this person will be haunted by the big heart demon oath, and his head will explode. The big heart demon oath couldn't deceive oneself. Fortunately, Yuan Xiaoyan came from the 10,000 Arts sect, a knowledgeable sect, so he could think of this in a flash. If it were any other cultivator, they would never think of the big heart demon oath. However, even Yuan Xiaoyan didn't expect that the big heart demon oath has many uses. Alas, forget it, what's the use of thinking so much? Let's wait and see in 2 days. By the way, it's time to prepare for the team fight. Even if we completely lose the single fight, there's still a chance for us to make a comeback in the team fight. 2 days passed in a flash. During this period, many things happened. For example, more and more foreign cultivators entered the Spirit Sword Mountain, ready to watch the upcoming peak fight. For example, Lingjian School, under the suggestion of an elder, began to charge a sky-high price for these spectators, which was accused of shamelessness. For example, under the manipulation of people with ulterior motives, the gambling on the final match soared, and the gambling money became astronomical. For example, the person who presided over the gambling in the mysterious Sky Mansion was naturally replaced by the regional manager of the Blue River region, a peak deity stage cultivator, to ensure that no one would play tricks in the gambling. For example, in these 2 days, Lu Li and Wang Lu didn't show up. Both of them were in closed-door training. Even their senior and junior brothers, who had a good relationship with them, couldn't see each other. For example, the enthusiastic onlookers were talking about the future of the match, each sticking to their own opinion. After witnessing the real peak fight in the semi-finals, most of the people were optimistic about Lu Li, cultivation base, method, and even her flawless fighting heart on the stage. Lu Li was like a legend, making people unable to imagine the possibility of her being defeated. As for Wang Lu, the previous 2 fights were indeed wonderful, but they also exposed his true strength. Without the help of psychological attack, he was just a small high-level qi cultivating stage cultivator. Although his defense was outstanding, and he also had the ability to counterattack, under Lu Li's brilliant sword heart, it was not worth mentioning. Even Wang Lu supporters believed that if he didn't use dirty tricks and fought fair and square, Wang Lu was definitely not his opponent. And in the final match, how could it be easy to come up with dirty tricks? However, in the previous 2 fights, which one of them didn't win in a situation where people were not optimistic about him? The name of the miracle Wang Lu had quietly spread. Under the watchful eyes of the public, the final match began. It was still the cloud-tread rooftop, still a boiling cauldron of voices. The most favored Lu Li had already arrived. Her gorgeous dress couldn't hide the girl's long-cultivated, sharp sword intent. At this time, her condition was at its peak. On the other side, Wang Lu's resting place was empty. Seeing that the match was about to begin, Wang Lu himself didn't show up. The host of the final, Feng Yin Daoist master, humphed. "Don't dawdle." At the same time, far away on the non-phase peak, a woman in white heard her senior brother's urging voice. Thereupon, she helplessly smiled. "Wang Lu, people are coming." "Okay," Wang Lu lightly replied, ignited the talisman in his hand, and instantly disappeared. A moment later, a tired sigh came from the non-phase peak. Senior sister, you've really accepted an amazing disciple. In less than 2 days, he actually succeeded. The woman in white also showed a trace of loss on her face. I have been cultivating for more than 100 years, but this is the first time I've seen someone more shameless than me. This kid is indeed worthy to be the chosen one, his future is really boundless. With that, she wryly smiled. Junior brother, help me clean up the battlefield. On the non-phase peak where the two of them stood, the originally flat ground had been covered with potholes, as if it had been ravaged by a violent force. On the cloud-tread rooftop, there was only less than a cup of tea's time before the start of the match. Many people gradually became impatient when Wang Lu finally arrived. Because he didn't have the flying immortal flying sword ability, Wang Lu suddenly appeared using the sect's internal transmission talisman, which immediately attracted a lot of surprised eyes. Different from the previous 2 matches, Wang Lu wore a pitch-black robe. No one knew what kind of mystery was hidden inside. His face was leisurely, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, and then he strode onto the cloud platform. On the cloud platform, Lu Li had been waiting for a long time. The young woman was like a sharp sword, and her astonishing sword intent assaulted everyone's face. Facing the sword intent, Wang Lu was like bathing in the spring breeze. His pace was not disorderly. He walked straight to his position and then revealed a smile. Seeing the two sides stood still, Feng Yin Daoist master made the final confirmation with a sinking voice, "Are you ready?" Lu Li raised her hand high. "Oh." Wang Lu nodded. "I'm ready. I can fight at any time." "Then, let the match begin." As soon as his voice fell, Wang Lu's feet moved. His figure moved like the wind, and the sword of Mount Kuan appeared in his hand, pointing straight at Lu Li. Chapter 168. The sect competition between the 10,000 Arts sect and Lingjian School was eventually reduced to a one-sided performance by Lingjian School. However, this final match didn't disappoint. As soon as the match began, it immediately caused an exclamation. Wang Lu actually made his move first. In the previous 2 matches, Wang Lu's characteristics had been revealed. He had an amazing defense and counterattack ability, but the corresponding restriction was also very big. Not only did he lack the offensive ability, but he also needed to use his body and magical power precisely. Especially in the face of Lu Li, he needed to be even more careful. Right now, this seemingly brave and fierce attack was very easy to reveal flaws. When the time came, the opposite party's brilliant sword heart only needed to launch a sword strike to completely disintegrate the 3-feet sword defense that he was so proud of. However, to everyone's surprise, Lu Li actually didn't move. She didn't even lift the sword in her hand, nor did she circulate the magical power within her body. She just sat there watching Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan directly stab into her eyes, and her eyes weren't in the slightest. Was she looking down on the opponent's attack power? However, even if Wang Lu's attack was not strong, the sword of Mount Kuan in his hand was exceptionally sharp. Previously, 3 of the 9 layers of seal had been opened, and the pure sharpness of the sword was enough to cut through the body of a foundation establishment cultivator. Thus, letting the sword of Mount Kuan stab her was simply courting death. However, the next moment, Wang Lu's movement suddenly stopped. The sword of Mount Kuan steadily stopped just a hair's breadth away from the opposite party. Wang Lu snorted, retracted his sword, and then stepped forward. His left hand went straight to Lu Li's throat. The girl slightly raised her head, and the sword in her hand couldn't help but move forward. However, just as it was about to touch Wang Lu, it stopped. What a sharp intuition, worthy to be called brilliant sword heart. Wang Lu stared straight into Lu Li's eyes. The girl's clear eyes reflected his figure, without any trace of impurity. This back and forth suddenly made many of the audience puzzled. Even some of the Yuanying stage elders were curious. How could these 2 juniors' moves not be understood by them? However, upon seeing this, the complexion of the several elders of Lingjian School changed. Lu Xian was the first to react. Wang Lu's fighting style, Could it be, humph, worthy of being the disciple of fifth junior sister, you really took this road? Fang He seemed to remember something unhappy, and his rigid and serious face became even more gloomy. It's really this move. Senior brother Zhou Ming, your worries are indeed justified. Hua Yun was the most carefree of all, laughing non-stop. Zhou Ming shook his head with a wry smile. In his heart, he admired the master and disciple of Nanfei's Peak from the bottom of his heart. It's only been 2 days, and he actually succeeded. I remember that even fifth junior sister wasn't this fast back then. Hua Yun laughed even more happily. We've been in the same sect for more than 100 years, but I've finally seen someone more shameless than fifth senior sister. Fang He snorted disdainfully, crooked way. As soon as his voice fell, Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kun attacked again, but this time, it was aimed at Lu Li's wrist. The girl's willowy eyebrows slightly wrinkled. Finally, she couldn't help but counterattack. The fiery sword and the sword of Mount Kun suddenly collided, but there was no violent shock as expected by the audience. Instead, the two agile swords swung back, marking the end of this round of fighting. If one observed carefully, one could see that at this time, both of their wrists were slightly trembling. Under the stage, Hua Yun could not help but exclaim, but the effect is surprisingly good. The few elders did not say anything. It was obvious that they had all recalled some sorrowful past events. For the elders of Spirit Sword Sect, Wang Wu's unique fighting method was not strange, although she restrained herself with the Great Heart Demon Oath not to take the initiative to hurt people. Although she used the Big Heart Demon Oath to restrain herself from taking the initiative to hurt people, in the actual fight, if she put her sword on the tip of the other party's nose, as long as it didn't hurt them, it wouldn't be counted as breaking the oath. On the contrary, when the other party counterattacked with all their strength, she would directly injure or kill them. In her own words, it was like building an arrow tower in front of someone else's house, and then concentrating on the tower defense. This was probably the #1 shameless fighting style in 9 regions. This set of fighting style could not be imitated by ordinary people. The characteristic of the Big Heart Demon Oath was equivalent exchange. The more sacrifice, the more strengthening. According to ordinary people's temperament, since they understood this set of fighting style, they didn't feel that they were at a disadvantage. However, once they had this understanding, the strengthening effect was naturally limited. However, the master and disciple of Nanfei's Peak had an unusual degree of shame. They always believed that they had sacrificed a great future. They even believed that if they switched to Brilliant Sword Heart, they could reach the stage of Zhou Ming and Lu Li. This was simply shameless to the extreme. In addition, when they made their move, they had to strictly control their strength. They couldn't really hurt the enemy, and they couldn't even have the intention to hurt the enemy. Once they encountered the opponent's resistance, they had to burst out with all their strength to shock the opponent to death. The strict requirement of magical power and temperament was far from what ordinary people could achieve. Exotic method, exotic fighting style, exotic master and disciple. However, the effect of this move was indeed astonishingly good. Hua Yun said again, at that time, senior sister had tricked them with this trick, and there were a lot of people who had fought back only to suffer a tragic counterattack. But little Lu Li is not so easy to trick. Although the little girl is usually a little stupid, her brilliant sword heart is no joke. That's not right. Hua Yun thought of something and her eyes widened in surprise. With little Lu Li's strength, is there a need to be so cautious? If it were other people, they would naturally be at a loss when encountering Wang Lu's set of tower defense tactics. However, Lu Li was different. Her stage was several levels higher than Wang Lu's, and one sword strike could decide the outcome of the battle. What is she worried about? Hua Yun was somewhat incredulous. Could it be that, in little Lu Li's view, Wang Lu's counterattack is something that she can't afford? That's not the case, or did senior sister strengthen her Big Heart Demon Oath in recent years? Lu Xian was also puzzled. That's impossible. That set of oath was something that several of us deliberated for a long time before it was finalized. Each syllable has an irreplaceable meaning. How could it be so easy to strengthen? According to Wang Lu's level, it's absolutely impossible for him to bounce back Lu Li's attack. Even if he could, it would be very strenuous, unless he has already reached the foundation establishment stage. The defensive power strengthened by the Big Heart Demon Oath was indeed amazing, but how could Lu Li's brilliant sword heart be inferior? Even the middle-level foundation establishment Zhan Zai didn't dare to take the 12 flying swords head-on, so how could Wang Lu take it head-on and bounce it back? Unfortunately, there was a barrier between the stage and the stage, in order to prevent the disciples on the stage from being seen clearly by the elders of the other sects, thus exposing the sect's secret method. The cloud platform shielded a lot of information, so that even the elders of the Lingjian school couldn't see the whole picture. They didn't know why Lu Li was actually afraid of Wang Lu to this extent. While they were puzzled, the situation on the stage changed again. "Senior sister, please make your move." Wang Lu held his sword horizontally across his chest and opened his mouth to challenge her. Lu Li gazed at him for a long time. No one knew how many years had passed in her clear sword heart. After a moment, she finally couldn't help but make her move. However, she was surprisingly cautious. Out of the 12 flying swords, she only used the fiery sword and the weak water sword, which lightly floated toward Wang Lu. With a clang, Wang Lu easily parried the fiery sword. The sword of Mount Kun swung down and also parried the weak water sword. The water and fire swords that once gave the 10,000 Arts sect disciples a big headache, which they had to use all of their strength to block, were quietly resolved by Wang Lu. The audience suddenly went into an uproar. In the 10,000 Arts sect's resting area, Lu Qiankai directly jumped up. "Isn't this too obvious? Don't the mysterious Sky Mansion people say anything?" Remembering that he and his senior and junior brothers had just pooled together tens of thousands of spirit stones to bet on Lu Li, he couldn't help but feel nervous. Zhan Zai's complexion turned gloomy. "No, it's not that. Lu Li seems to be afraid of something. She doesn't dare to go all out." "Afraid of what?" "Her attack power is so strong, wouldn't it be fine if she could kill her opponent in a split second? Why would she be so careful? When she defeated you and me, she..." "Enough, be quiet." Zhan Zai gave an order, forcefully suppressing the restless Lu Qiankai. However, at this time, he couldn't understand what was it about Wang Lu that made Lu Li dread him. That set of counterattack nameless sword was indeed powerful, but if it wanted to rebound Lu Li's sword, that was just a pipe dream. What exactly was Lu Li worried about? In fact, Lu Li didn't worry about anything at all. When she entered the fighting state, she completely lost most of her feelings. Her every move was guided by her sword heart. And now, that clear sword heart told her that it was not the time to go all out. As for the reason, Lu Li didn't know and didn't care. As long as she did everything according to her intuition, everything would go smoothly. However, as soon as Lu Li slowed down her rhythm, Wang Lu found it difficult to bear. Although the girl's sword momentum was gentle and continuous, it was, after all, the brilliant sword heart. Every time he easily parried it, Wang Lu felt his inner mansion was in turmoil and his primordial spirit was shaken. The gap in stage was, after all, a gap. Sure enough, after 3 to 5 moves, Lu Li's flowing wind sword suddenly accelerated. When Wang Lu couldn't pull back his sword in time, she unexpectedly thrust it out. Wang Lu tried his best to parry it, but his body swayed and his magical power surged, which impressively revealed a flaw. The next moment, the 7 flying swords behind Lu Li combined into one. However, the girl actually hesitated when she raised her arm to give the order to focus fire. The brilliant sword heart suddenly issued a faint warning, indicating that there was a great danger ahead. Lu Li, who always believed in her intuition, put down her hand without hesitation, ready to separate her flying swords and continue the protracted fight with her continuous sword momentum. However, at this time, Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kun, which had been pushed away, slanted to stab her. Although Lu Li didn't know about the Big Heart Demon Oath, her intuition told her that this sword was not a threat, so she was ready to ignore it. A moment later, Lu Li's vision blurred, and the sword heart in her jade mansion suddenly bloomed. The girl involuntarily lifted her arm, and the 7 flying swords that were still separated suddenly converged and pierced straight out. "Ha, come at me." Wang Lu's scattered sword momentum suddenly stabilized and solidified, and his whole body released an astonishing aura. The several elders under the stage suddenly stood up, their eyes were filled with amazement. Entering Foundation establishment. They had no time to marvel at the sudden appearance of Wang Lu's Foundation establishment stage cultivation base. They saw that Lu Li didn't care about the sudden change. Her flying sword momentum was not right. Unexpectedly, she wanted to meet force with non-phase sword art. The girl's clear and agile eyes were completely gone, leaving behind only a vacant look. The next moment, Wang Lu raised his sword of Mount Kuan and directly collided with the brilliant sword heart. The long-awaited shock finally arrived. On the cloud platform, the clouds tumbled, showing the huge energy contained in the collision of the 2 swords. A moment later, the result was clear. Wang Lu coughed several times. Blood came out from the corner of his mouth. 3 of Lu Li's 12 flying swords were broken. Wang Lu wiped his mouth, and under the countless people's dumbfounded gaze, said with a smile, 3 more times, come again. Chapter 169. The decisive battle on the Cloud Tread rooftop had been going on for some time. Based on normal standards, this battle had already gone on for quite some time. This was because this was an arena battle between elite disciples, and there were elders watching over them. As long as the participants could win, they normally wouldn't hold back. During the battle, they would reveal their trump cards, and as the hare rose and the falcon descended, victory and defeat would be decided extremely quickly. In fact, in the previous 2 rounds of the fight, the winner and loser were all decided within 3 to 5 moves. The pace of the fight was compact and exciting. Often, there would be several waves of changes in a single breath, which overwhelmed the audience. Before the final match, many people regarded the semi-final match between Zhang Zai and Lu Li as the pinnacle match between the 2 sects. In that match, 10,000 methods comprehension and brilliant sword heart confronted each other, and in just a few rounds, the audience was suffocated. However, in today's decisive battle, the situation on the stage made the audience tangled. In recent years, this old man has watched a lot of fights between the younger generation, but this is the first time that I don't understand it. A sage-like, white-haired, ruddy old man gently stroked his beard, and his 2 slender white eyebrows were tangled together. This elder from Myriad Appearance sect had a profound cultivation base and a powerful primordial spirit. Since the beginning of the fight, he had been closely watching all the changes on the Cloud Tread rooftop. However, the feedback information made him unable to fathom it. Why did Wang Lu confidently take the initiative to attack? What exactly was Lu Li afraid of? Were it not for the ice-cold face of the mysterious Sky Mansion's manager who remained silent, he really would have suspected that this fight was fake. While he was puzzled, the first wave of confrontation between Wang Lu and Lu Li broke out. The amount of information that he received in an instant shocked this elder of Myriad Appearance sect. Many of the changes were still puzzling, but there was one thing that was beyond doubt. Wang Lu had actually reached the Foundation establishment stage. For a deity stage cultivator, even 100 Foundation establishment cultivators couldn't withstand the wrath of his primordial spirit. However, as the reward-giver elder of Myriad Appearance sect, he was well aware of how difficult it was to reach the Foundation establishment stage. From Qi cultivating stage to Foundation establishment stage was a big hurdle, enough to make most of the cultivators in 9 regions frustrated. Even those outstanding disciples had to spend several months in seclusion from Qi refinement to Foundation establishment. They had to accumulate enough energy, and with the help of Foundation establishment pills and other medicines, they could successfully break through. When the lead disciple of the Myriad Appearance School reached the Foundation establishment stage, he didn't use elixirs, nor did he go into seclusion. After meditating in the training room for a day and a night, he successfully built his jade mansion and successfully reached the foundation establishment stage. He was regarded as a rare genius in 100 years by the school, and was trained with all their might. According to the rumor, Qianghua of Xingjing sect only needed to meditate for a moment before she successfully cultivated her jade mansion, which was an incredible legend for many people in the Wanxian League. And now, a scene that was even more miraculous than the legend was happening right before his eyes. Someone had actually reached foundation establishment just before the battle. Furthermore, it was literally the foundation establishment before the battle. It was rumored that Lu Li reached the foundation establishment stage in the Blood Cloud Gorge. However, that battle lasted for several days and nights, so who knew how long it took for her to reach the foundation establishment stage? Wang Lu, on the other hand, did not stop at all. Naturally, he stepped onto the threshold of the foundation establishment stage. Like Elder Wan Xiang, all the people from the other sects were also shocked. The 5 disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect had their mouths wide open. They felt that even their primordial spirit was somewhat unable to operate. Their eldest brother Zhan Zai tightly bit his lips, his heart was filled with both alarm and anger. As the lead disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, he only took a cup of tea worth of time to reach the foundation establishment stage. According to the rumor, he and Xianghua were on the same level, both of them were at the top of the Wanxian League. However, compared to this Wang Lu who reached the foundation establishment stage while talking and laughing, what was that? Only the elders of the Lingjian school were not surprised at all. Because Wang Lu was, after all, a cultivator with void spirit root. Although the property of this spirit root was a bit of a pain in the ass in the current 9 regions, at least in breaking through the bottleneck, void spirit root had an incomparable advantage over other spirit roots. There was truly no resistance, a smooth transition. Today, he reached the foundation establishment stage, and tomorrow, he would go to work. No, he would go to work while he was at the foundation establishment stage. Of course, the sudden transition from high-level qi cultivating stage to the edge of foundation establishment stage was not a big nor small miracle. However, with the help of elixirs and the big heart demon oath, it was not difficult to understand. What really surprised them was Lu Li's blank look at the last moment. She collided head-on with Wang Lu, whose magical power and primordial spirit were at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. She only slightly injured the opponent, but she lost 3 of her flying swords. Although the explosive power of the brilliant sword heart remained the same, the agile and ever-changing feeling was completely gone. This was not a choice that a normal Lu Li would make. While people were still in doubt, the second round of collision between Wang Lu and Lu Li came. After this round of confrontation, the blank look in Lu Li's eyes disappeared, and her clear and agile temperament was once again glowing. The girl adjusted the position of the 9 flying swords and pointed her finger forward. The flying swords suddenly dispersed, forming an encirclement, and then continued to attack one after another in an exceptionally tricky manner. Wang Lu sneered. His sword of Mount Kun, which was previously calm, became as agile as the wind. The hazy figure of an elegant woman could be vaguely seen on the surface of the sword. It was the sword spirit Autumn Beam who had fully stimulated her power. Under the 3 feet sword defense, the sword of Mount Kun was like a phantom. 1 against 9, yet it didn't yield. The brilliant sword heart that once gave the 10,000 Arts sect cultivators a big headache couldn't break through Wang Lu's sword defense at all. However, after a series of clanking sounds, Wang Lu's expression gradually turned dignified. Strengthened by the big heart demon oath, coupled with the overflow of magical power during the foundation establishment stage, Wang Lu indeed has a perfect defense at this time. However, if Lu Li doesn't engage in close combat with him, Wang Lu's counterattack would be ineffective. In the long run, Lu Li would still have a higher chance of winning. Just as Hua Yun was trying to voice out her own judgment, she saw Wang Lu sneer. He swung his sword to deflect the 3 flying swords, and then he suddenly took a step forward. Lu Li indifferently floated backward. Her colorful dress drew an agile rainbow. In terms of agility, even 10 Wang Lu's couldn't compare to Lu Li's brilliant sword heart. However, the next moment, the girl's figure stagnated, and her eyes once again showed a vacant look. The 9 flying swords converged into one and unexpectedly launched that violent and overbearing attack again. Boom! After the second round of collision, Lu Li once again broke 3 flying swords, while Wang Lu vomited out a mouthful of blood. His injury wasn't light, but it didn't affect the overall situation. Seeing the remaining 6 flying swords in mid-air, most of the people realized that Lu Li had suffered a big loss, but why exactly was that? While they were puzzled, the girls showed a vacant look for the third time. The remaining 6 flying swords converged and bombarded with full force. Boom! There were only 3 flying swords left. Wang Lu's injury worsened, but his morale had climbed to the peak. As long as this was the last blow, Lu Li's flying swords would be destroyed, and she wouldn't be able to use any of her tricks. And at this time, a certain brilliant peak master suddenly stood up. What a cunning kid! With that, Zhou Ming pointed his finger. Look at his clothes. Under Zhou Ming's guidance, Lu Xian, Fang He, and the other elders immediately saw the reason. It turned out that when Wang Lu fought against Lu Li, he occasionally shook his sleeves, and the thick ink-like darkness on the sleeves of his black robe would slightly melt, revealing densely packed characters. It was precisely when Lu Li saw those characters that her face turned blank and her lightness was no longer there. And those characters were mostly, "Idiot, you only know how to eat. Eat, 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 eat until you die. Give me 3 more hours of practice, if you don't finish, you're not allowed to eat." And so on and so forth. Words that made people scratch their heads in confusion. However, upon seeing this, the elders of the Lingjian school burst into laughter a moment later. Sure enough, he's a cunning kid. Lu Li's sword heart was clear and pure. Once she entered the fighting state, she would ignore the outside world and would not be disturbed. However, Wang Lu was exceptionally cunning in imitating her master Zhou Ming's tone and handwriting, writing a jamming suit. Lu Li could ignore everything else, but she couldn't ignore her master. On the contrary, Lu Li's clear and pure physique would actually amplify this part of the noise. Just now, in her mind, there seemed to be countless masters roaring and rebuking her, which almost made her soul fly away and scatter. If not for the more powerful suppression of fighting intent, Lu Li's primordial spirit would have already collapsed. Although this move of Wang Lu was cunning, it really hit the vital point. Huayun shook her head and said, to be able to think of this move and do this step, Wang Lu has thoroughly studied little Lu Li, senior brother. This loss is not undeserved. It's all because that girl Lu Li's brilliant sword heart is not enough, otherwise, these words are meaningless. Wang Lu's non-phase method hasn't been cultivated to a high level, moreover, his magical power is still a few levels lower. Humph. Zhou Ming resentfully sat down. His face was still gloomy, but he wasn't worried at all. Wang Lu, that kid, underestimated the brilliant sword heart too much. Does he really think that by breaking Lu Li's flying sword, he can win? Huayun asked, oh, what do you mean? Humph, flying sword incarnation, that's the method that Lu Li just started to cultivate, so she's far from being proficient in it. Her real skill is still in close combat. When her flying sword is broken and she has to fight in close combat, Wang Lu has no chance of winning, even if he has the big heart demon oath. This was not difficult to understand. If Wang Lu was in his peak state, perhaps his non-phase sword, strengthened by the big heart demon oath, coupled with the overflow of magical power from his foundation establishment stage, would be able to confront Lu Li's brilliant sword heart head-on. However, at this time, he had suffered a serious injury, so it was impossible for his non-phase sword to maintain its peak power. Therefore, Lu Li's initial choice to use her flying sword to fight was correct. Although she was tricked by Wang Lu, her odds of winning were still higher. In the end, no one could deny that Lu Li was stronger in terms of raw power. Huayun said, however, this is, after all, a very wonderful fight. Wang Lu has done better than anyone could have expected. Several senior brothers coldly humphed in unison, but no one could refute it. No one could do what Wang Lu did. Although this kid was as despicable and shameless as his master, but he was indeed formidable, and they couldn't help but admire him. Unfortunately, he seems to be so confident that he has placed a big bet on himself. I don't know what he's going to do next. While they were talking, the situation on the field really changed. There were only 3 flying swords left in Lu Li's hand. Even if she looked dazed and her agile heart was no longer there, she instinctively clenched her sword and gave up the idea of using her flying sword to hurt the enemy. Then, the girl's figure was like the wind. The 2 swords in her hands simultaneously ignited with flames, and her swift movement was like 2 dazzling meteors. The 20th layer of fiery sword, double sword combined chop. Wang Lu's eyes suddenly changed. His left hand gently stroked the sword of Mount Kun, and then he pulled out his last card. The 4th layer of the seal on the sword of Mount Kun was broken. In a flash, the sword spirit autumn beam condensed her sword outside her body and stood next to Wang Lu. Her slender hand and Wang Lu held the sword hilt. Then, the 2 of them lifted the sword of Mount Kun and went straight toward Lu Li. Boom. After a deafening explosion sound, a ring of flame, fueled by the clouds, crazily rolled and spread out. The innermost layer of the cloud platform was instantly incinerated. The cloud platform, which was bound by the array, was like a flame purgatory. The power of this sword strike was enough to burn a city. In that purgatory, Lu Li continued to cough. Blood continued to flow from her mouth. She had suffered a serious internal injury. However, her 2 hands still tightly held the sword, and her imposing manner of a sword cultivator hadn't diminished in the slightest. On the other side, in the middle of the flame, a dazzling golden light shone. That was the magical light released by the elder to save his or her life when one side was defeated. When the golden light appeared, the outcome was decided. This fight. Lu Li won. Amidst the thunderous cheers from the audience, there were several areas that were completely silent. The disciples of Lingjian School and 10,000 Arts sect gawked at the result on the stage. They all felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. That Wang Lu actually lost? Well, although from any rational point of view, this was a reasonable result, so much so that several disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect even went all out to bet on Lu Li's victory. However, when the result came out, it was still hard to believe. Could the miracle Wang Lu not create another miracle? Speaking of which, I remember that Wang Lu, that kid, bet more than 90 million spirit stones on himself before the fight? TSK, 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 you should cherish your life and stay away from gambling. At this moment, on the rooftop, wrapped in golden light, Wang Lu had a distressed look on his face. Damn it, I still lost. Opposite him, Lu Li grinned and put away her sword. The girl's fighting intent was completely restrained, and the sharp sword intent was replaced by an innocent smile. You fought very well. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. Uncle said that people of non-phase peak are good at playing tricks, but their own cultivation base is not that good. Wang Lu wryly smiled. Your comfort is really grating. While saying that, he shook his head. Forget it, let me congratulate you on your victory first. With that, he extended his hand toward Lu Li to show his friendship. Although Lu Li was naive, she was not without etiquette. She walked over with a smile and held Wang Lu's hand. The next moment, a pink mist sprayed out from Wang Lu's palm. Lu Li swayed and then softly fell to the ground. Wang Lu reached out to hug the girl, slowly put her on the ground, and then gently pressed a mechanism on his shoulder. The golden light around his body was extinguished. On and off the stage, there was a deathly silence. Wang Lu stood on the stage for a while and coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. His injury was very heavy and could fall at any time, but since no one spoke, he had to open his mouth. Although I'm sorry, I have to say that I've won. Chapter 170. In the 9 regions calendar year 6348, the duel on the cloud platform of Spirit Sword Mountain was destined to be recorded in the annals of history. Although the cultivation base of the two combatants was not high, only low-level foundation establishment, one of them even entered the foundation establishment stage before the duel. However, this duel revealed a truth to the countless onlookers at the scene, and even the cultivators who later learned the whole story of this duel. Just how low could a cultivator's moral integrity go? When the referee of the duel, Feng Yin Daoist Master, announced Wang Lu's victory and explained that the previous golden light was released by Wang Lu himself, the audience almost rioted. They had seen shameless people, but they had never seen such a shameless one. A peak duel of strength and wisdom, a duel that was supposed to promote the spirit of immortal cultivation and provide positive energy, was completely tarnished by Wang Lu's crafty plot at the last moment. The audience felt as if they ate a fruit and got half a worm, which couldn't be more disgusting. However, there was no doubt about the outcome of this duel. Although Wang Lu didn't have any moral integrity, he didn't violate the rules. The rules didn't say that the contestants couldn't release their own golden light to falsify the result. And Lu Li, upon seeing the golden light, relaxed her vigilance, which was her own stupidity, so she couldn't blame others. In fact, after the 20 layers of fiery sword, Lu Li's magical power was almost exhausted, unable to maintain the operation of her sword heart. Of course, compared to the seriously injured and dying Wang Lu, she still had the upper hand in terms of combat effectiveness. Unfortunately, at the last moment, the deciding factor was not the combat effectiveness. The result of the duel was recognized by the peak deity stage disciple of mysterious Sky Mansion. He wryly smiled and said that this time, the mysterious Sky Mansion was going to lose miserably. Of course, this was a lie, because, except for a few people, most of the people who bet on Lu Li were still betting on her. No one thought that Wang Lu could really win, but in the end, he still won. For such a result, the celebration banquet that Lingjian School had originally prepared had to be cancelled. Originally, they planned to make friends with the cultivators from various sects who came to watch the duel, but now, there was nothing left to do. After the duel was over, they went back to their respective sects with a disgusted feeling. And many righteous people, before they were about to leave, showed clear hostility towards Wang Lu. "Brat, if you leave the mountain in the future, don't ever let me see you, or else I'll definitely teach you a lesson." "That's right, I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen someone as shameless as you." If I wasn't a guest, I would definitely give you a good beating to vent my anger." In this regard, the elders of Lingjian School could only smile bitterly. Although the disciples of the same school were on the same side, they couldn't speak up for the direct disciple. To be honest, most of them had complicated feelings. As for Wang Lu himself, while receiving treatment from the sect's elders, he made a decisive statement in the face of the crowd's agitation. All right, come and hit me." The warriors of justice were all stunned. You're giving up on treatment? Are you provoking us?" Wang Lu nodded. "That's right. Hit me if you can." "Fine, you're seeking your own death." Therefore, all kinds of flying swords, seals, talismans, flags, and other things covered the sky. The 7th elder who was in charge of treatment was shocked. Seeing that he was about to be swallowed by the sea of flying swords, Wang Lu stretched out his right hand. "Wait. What, you want to beg for mercy again?" I'm afraid it's too late to beg for mercy now." Wang Lu said, "If you want to hit me, you can, but you have to pay first." "What?" Wang Lu said confidently, "There's no reason for me to waste my time and energy to satisfy your sense of justice, right? If you want to hit me, you can, but you have to pay 10,000 spiritual stones first, and then I'll fight with you in the arena." 10,000 spiritual stones. Wang Lu sneered. "This is the base price. My energy is limited in one day, and I can't play with you indefinitely. I'll only fight 10 battles a day, and the battles will start according to the order of your bids. I'll give you 10 minutes to bid. The number of slots is limited, so if you want to fight, hurry up. F*CK, don't you have any shame? Wang Lu slapped the table. If you're poor and have no money, just say it. I, your father, bid 100,000 spiritual stones. See how I beat the sh*t out of you. Wang Lu slapped the table again. You, Taoist Master King Pill, have the nerve to challenge me, a foundation establishment cultivator? Who's the shameless one here? I'll say in advance, the cultivation base is limited to Shudan and below, not Shudan. If you have a high cultivation base, you can pay double the price and suppress your cultivation base and primordial spirit. If you want to accept the bid, you can choose not to accept it. I'll accept the reservation here. After paying the deposit, when my cultivation base is the same as yours, I can accept the challenge at any time. You're quite good at scheming. Wang Lu sneered. Didn't you inquire about my name before coming here? How could a lowly person like you hope to compete with the brilliance of the top student of Spirit Sword Sect? Okay, it's almost time. Is the bidding over? I'll go first. I bid 500,000 spiritual stones. Although I'm in Shudan stage, I'll suppress my cultivation base to low-level foundation establishment. I won't take advantage of you. I just want to tell you that there's still justice in the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions. A sword cultivator from the first-rank sect, Heavenly Sword Sect, loudly shouted with a righteous look, which won a burst of applause. Well said, fellow Taoist Luo-san. Us righteous cultivators should have this kind of courage, Luo-san, I support you. That's right, fellow Taoist Luo-san, today I'm short of money, so I can't compare to you, these rich cultivators. However, what you just said is right in my heart. Of your 500,000 spiritual stones, I'll support you 5,000. It's just a little bit of my strength, but I also want to promote righteousness. To raise the prestige of my righteous path. Luo-san solemnly cupped his hands and said, Thank you, fellow Taoists, for your support. I bid a sky-high price to fight him, not to become famous, but to promote righteousness. Since ancient times, my Heavenly Sword Sect has upheld the righteous path. Since the Great War of Immortals and Demons, we've been one of the mainstays of the Righteous Path Alliance. Our sect leader, Sword 16, has reached the unity stage, and his divine sword is rarely matched. In addition, our sect takes good care of our disciples and trains them seriously. We have F***, advertising costs a fee. If you keep talking, you'll have to pay more. Wang Lu slammed the registration desk below the cloud platform, urging Luo-san to go up and fight as soon as possible. Luo-san looked regretful, but he didn't say anything. He went up the platform with his sword in hand, stepped on a sword light, and floated in the air. He pointed his sword at Wang Lu from above. Come up, let me teach you the principles of being a man and cultivating immortality. Wang Lu sneered and walked up the cloud platform. A moment later. Fellow Taoist Luo-san. Fellow Taoist Luo-san, what's wrong with you? Wake up. Wang Lu, what kind of trick did you use to injure fellow Taoist Luo-san? Wang Lu gently wiped the sword of Mount Kuan on the platform, and with a disdainful smile, he said to himself, I've killed him. Next. Damn, Xiang Tinga of Empty Bamboo Mountain, bid 450,000 spirit stones to avenge fellow Taoist Luo-san. I'm also a Shudan stage cultivator, and I've suppressed my cultivation to low-level foundation establishment. I don't want to take advantage of you. I want to see what kind of trick you have. Another moment passed. Brother Xiang. Brother Xiang, what's wrong with you? Wake up. Wang Lu, what kind of trick did you use to injure Brother Xiang? Wang Lu gently wiped the sword of Mount Kuan on the platform, and with a disdainful smile, he said to himself, double kill, next. Next your mother. I'm Guyu of Ghost Een Mountain, King Pill Realm. Do you dare to fight me? Wang Lu snorted. Do you dare to pay first? Damn, isn't it just double? 400,000 spirit stones are here. Wait for me on the platform. According to your request, I'll suppress my cultivation to high-level foundation establishment. Let's see how you stop me. A moment passed. Brother Guyu. Brother Guyu, what's wrong with you? Wake up. Wang Lu, what kind of trick did you use to injure Brother Guyu? Wang Lu gently wiped the sword of Mount Kun on the platform. With a disdainful smile on his face, he said to himself, big kill, next. After 10 rounds, Wang Lu withdrew the sword of Mount Kun and slowly walked off the platform. The surrounding area was deathly silent. Hundreds of people involuntarily made way for him. Wang Lu smiled. My Lingjian school is hospitable. You can stay on the mountain for a few days. My rules remain the same. 10 rounds a day. The highest bidder will fight. I wish you all good luck. Watching Wang Lu leave, the hundreds of people didn't open their mouth for a long time. Just now, he had fought 10 battles in a row, and by the end of it, the people below the stage were actually scared witless. Previously, when they watched the fight between Wang Lu and Lu Li, they only saw that Wang Lu was suppressed by Lu Li to the point that he had to resort to tricks to fight. Thus, they inwardly thought, how much real ability does this kid have? They had been cultivating for many years, experienced and knowledgeable. Coupled with their superior intelligence, they could certainly break his tricks. However, when they went on the platform and fought against him, they found that the average person didn't even have the qualification to see his tricks. His real ability was enough to make them speechless. A total of 10 people, among which, there were geniuses who were regarded as the future hope of some righteous sects, as well as seniors who suppressed their cultivation base in an attempt to win with their rich experience and insight. Without exception, all of them fell under the sword of Wang Lu. Although among these 10 people, there were no geniuses from high-rank sects, there were also no weak ones. However, Wang Lu's restriction was only below shoot on stage, which meant that the opponent might have a complete stage advantage over him. But this was still not enough, far from enough. Even Daoist Master King Pill, in Foundation Establishment stage, could not penetrate Wang Lu's sword defense, nor could he resist his counterattack. As for cultivators above Yuanying stage, perhaps they could defeat Wang Lu with their Foundation Establishment stage cultivation base, but they also wanted face. Yuanying bullying Foundation Establishment stage, how could they have the nerve to do that? After 10 consecutive defeats, few people remembered Wang Lu's shamelessness. Instead, many people remembered the words of the oldest person in Kunlun sect, the immortal Wang, who was known to be able to see through the past and the present. From now on, the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions is the world of the young. When the immortal Wang said this, it just so happened that Xianghua of Xingjing sect had reached the Foundation Establishment stage through meditation, which caused a sensation in the 9 regions. People only thought that it was the goodwill of Kunlun sect to Xingjing sect, but now, it seemed like there was a hidden meaning in these words. Xianghua Fairy, Zhanzai, Lu Li, Wang Lu. Most of these peerless geniuses of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League suddenly rose in the last 10 years, and then went far beyond the rest of the immortal cultivation world. Now, they have yet to grow up, but they have already shown their sharpness. In the future, once their cultivation base is successful, perhaps no one could stop them. The new generation excels the old. For a time, many immortal cultivation world seniors thought of this old saying. Chapter 171. After the peak showdown between Lu Li and Wang Lu, and after experiencing Wang Lu's 10 consecutive victories on the Grand Cloud platform, the spectators from all over the world left the mountain one after another. In fact, even if they wanted to stay, there was no way. Lingjian School was not a park where people could stroll around whenever they wanted. With the departure of a large number of spectators, the exchange between the 10,000 Arts sect and Lingjian School also quietly came to an end. Although according to the rules, there was still a 5-on-5 team battle between the 2 sects to compete, the interest of the cultivators of the 2 sects inevitably faded. As for this team battle, people mostly treated it as the aftertaste of the climax. Even the participating disciples didn't pay too much attention to this matter. The 10,000 Arts sect, on the other hand, slightly rubbed their fists, wanting to wash away their previous shame. However, their preparation for the match was not too active. The team fight between the two sects began on time 2 days later. This match actually had the ideal harmonious atmosphere of friendship first and competition second. The disciples of the two sects went all out, yet there wasn't much murderous aura. In this match, the 10,000 Arts sect really played their due imposing manner. The 5 disciples cooperated with each other tacitly, and their spells emerged one after another, which dazzled the spectators and made them gasp in amazement. The Lingjian school's cooperation appeared to be a bit inferior. Not long after the fight began, when Biyao and Yuyun were regretfully and unwillingly blasted out of the arena by Zhang Zai's annihilation thunder. During this period, although Wang Lu had the intention to rescue them, even if he had the big heart demon oath to strengthen his non-phase method, it was still beyond his ability to protect the 4 of them in front of Zhang Zai, Yi Feifei, and the others. In the middle of the fight, even Yu Xinyao had no choice but to withdraw. The Lingjian school only had Lu Li and Wang Lu, while the 10,000 Arts sect had 5 people. None of them were defeated. At this point, people thought that the 10,000 Arts sect would smoothly win and save some face. However, the result was unexpected. Because no matter what, the 10,000 Arts sect couldn't deal with the remaining 2. Not to mention Wang Lu, even Lu Li's brilliant sword heart couldn't do anything to his 3-feet sword defense. Zhang Zai and Yi Feifei had tried to bombard it with their strongest method, but it didn't budge at all. Although Lu Li wasn't good at defense, the 12 flying swords were not that easy to deal with. Not to mention, although Wang Lu couldn't protect all 4 of them, he could easily protect Lu Li with his non-phase sword qi. After being entangled for a while, the advantage of Wang Lu and Lu Li in a protracted fight was manifested. On the 10,000 Arts sect side, the most important defender, Lu Qiankai, had exhausted his talismans and could no longer protect his teammates from the brilliant sword heart. Therefore, several of his senior and junior brothers were killed one by Lu Li. Finally, Zhang Zai tried to repeat the same old trick by using the annihilation thunder to perish together with his opponent. As a result, Wang Lu enthusiastically rushed forward and tightly hugged him. The raging thunder power was completely stifled, which nearly caused Zhang Zai's Jade Mansion to collapse and his primordial spirit to collapse. The 10,000 Arts sect had nothing to say after losing both the single fight and the team fight. Thus, the several senior and junior brothers decided to endure the humiliation and return to the mountain for closed-door training. They would endure the hardships and wait for the next day to take revenge. Before leaving, the Lingjian school organized the disciples to go to the 4 divisions' peak to see them off. The 2 sides exchanged farewell words, which was a sincere and touching scene. 3 years later, no, 1 year later, I will visit you again. Zhang Zai's complexion was solemn, with an unyielding fighting spirit, trying to conceal the tension and palpitation in his heart. Lu Li, when the time comes, I will not lose to you again. The girl tilted her head with a puzzled look. But 1 year later, you will definitely lose to me again. Zhang Zai didn't expect that his innocent confession would get such a reply. He stiffened his neck and said, that's not necessarily true. Standing on the side, Wang Lu, who also saw off the guests, could not help but sigh, deeply lamenting the IQ of these good-for-nothing nerds of the 10,000 Arts sect. Senior sister Lu Li, that grandson said that the next time he comes, he wants to invite you to barbecue. The girl's eyes suddenly became clear and bright, and her smile was as bright as a flower. Okay, you're welcome to come again at any time. With that, she stretched out her pair of slender jade-like hands, tightly grasped Zhang Zai's hand, and then swung it up and down. That's a deal. Next time you come, you must invite me to eat barbecue. Zhang Zai instantly felt that his sincere heart was being twisted and stirred by 2 completely opposite feelings. One was called the happiness brought by the touch of a gentle and exquisite little hand, and the other was called the pain that seemed hopeless in this lifetime. In next to no time, his pure and childlike heart shattered into bits and pieces, as if it had suffered a severe blow that wasn't inferior to the enlightened sword heart. In addition, Hai Yunfan was also filled with emotion. Brother Wang, you've taught me another lesson. Little Hai, when did I sleep with you? Don't talk nonsense. Hee hee. Hai Yunfan tried hard to make himself laugh. Seriously, since I left the Spirit Sword Mountain 5 years ago, I've been thinking, if I didn't go to the 10,000 Arts sect, but instead became Brother Wang's martial brother, what would it be like? Wang Lu frowned and took half a step back. Little Hai, to tell you the truth, your current appearance makes me a bit uncomfortable. Hai Yunfan decided to ignore Wang Lu and continued to say, because of this, I've been tangled for a long time, but now I'm relieved. Compared to being your martial brother, it's more interesting to be your opponent. Of course, I don't want to be your enemy. Opponent and enemy, these were indeed two completely different concepts. Next time we meet, I will try my best not to lose to you. After saying that, Hai Yunfan shook his head. Of course, for a loser to say such a line would only make people laugh. However, the declaration must be said. Brother Wang, I look forward to our next meeting. Wang Lu looked at little Hai. Okay. Oh, I almost forgot, this time, I have a gift for you. Hai Yunfan handed a piece of sincerity paper to Wang Lu. It may be useful to you. Wang Lu took it and found that it was the royal seal of the Grand Cloud Empire. He couldn't help but smile. Little Hai was indeed little Hai. When it was time to be considerate, he was especially considerate. With the royal seal of the Grand Cloud Empire, the Wisdom Sect's cross-state business would go to another level. Nowadays, Wang Lu didn't need other resources, especially spirit stones, but this royal seal, which couldn't be easily bought with money. After sending away the people of the 10,000 Arts sect, the Lingjian school once again became deserted. In this short period of half a month, a lot of things had happened. When the cloud wave boat gradually went away under the golden sunshine, many people felt heartfelt exhaustion. However, exhaustion was exhaustion, the finishing work still needed to be done. For example, the gambling settlement of a certain crazy gambler. In the duel between Wang Lu and Lu Li, he bet nearly 100 million spirit stones, which was the biggest gamble in the Blue River region in the past decades. In the end, he won more than 100 million spirit stones, which could be called incomparably rich. Such a huge amount of money was something that even the mysterious Sky Mansion couldn't come up with in a short time. Finally, the person in charge of the Blue River region personally delivered more than 100 first-rate mysterious sky crystals, which shocked countless people. According to the prior agreement, Wang Lu gave 50 of them to his master. The woman was so happy that on the spot, she announced that she would immediately marry him, which made the person in charge of the mysterious Sky Mansion extremely embarrassed. Fortunately, the woman's ambition was beaten back by the sect leader and the disciplinary elder, and only then did she let it go. The poor suddenly became rich. The fifth elder had completely lost the calmness that a Taoist master of immortal cultivation should have. She put away the 50 mysterious sky crystals and happily rode her flying sword down the mountain, saying that she wanted to carefully enjoy life. More than 10 days later, the woman in white returned to the mountain. Surprisingly, she once again lived a poor and happy life. Wang Lu was very curious about this. In just 10 days, she was able to see through the world of mortals. How could this woman's self-cultivation be so good? However, when he asked, the answer he got was like a thunderclap. I've spent all my money, so I had to come back. Spent all my money. Wang Lu couldn't help but prostrate himself in admiration. In just 10 days, she had spent tens of millions of spirit stones. However, before he could exclaim in surprise, he heard his master's gentle and creepy question, "Little Lu heir, when will our marriage be held?" Wang Lu loudly cursed, "When you pick up your moral integrity." Actually, at this time, Wang Lu was also out of money. During the days when his master went down the mountain, he had continuously transferred all of his winnings to the Wisdom sect to accelerate its development. This rapidly growing sect was currently in a state of capital hunger, so no matter how much money it was, it could be digested. Wang Lu firmly believed that when the wisdom sect blossomed and bore fruit, his investment at this time would be several times more than before. In any case, the story of the master and disciple of the non-phase peak squandering hundreds of millions of spirit stones in just 10 days had become the glorious legend of the Spirit Sword Mountain. After that, there was the issue of the sect's lead disciple. In order to encourage the disciples to work hard, the Lingjian School's Heavenly Sword Hall, under the suggestion of Wang Lu, established the lead disciple system. And the champion of the single fight in the sect's competition would have the authority of the lead disciple for 10 years. Although there was a great controversy in the final fight, Wang Lu's victory was beyond doubt. Therefore, in the midst of the discussion, the sect leader Feng Yin Daoist Master, on behalf of all the Heavenly Sword Hall elders, conferred the title of lead disciple to Wang Lu. The conferment ceremony was held quietly outside the sect leader's bamboo room on the stellar peak. There were only a few people present. Originally, the Lingjian school intended to gather all the disciples at the 4 divisions peak to announce the candidate of the lead disciple, in order to stimulate the morale. However, who told Wang Lu, this lead disciple, to come out of nowhere, so the grand ceremony had to be hastily cancelled. For Wang Lu, the special authority of the lead disciple was far more meaningful than the grand ceremony, and he never cared what other people thought of him. After receiving the gold medal that symbolized the honor of the lead disciple from Feng Yin Daoist Master's hand, Wang Lu was ready to go down the mountain. However, he heard Feng Yin say with a smile, "Hee, don't you want to accompany this new master to chat?" The sect's lead disciple was only restricted by the sect leader, so in theory, he was equal to the sect leader's disciple. Since Feng Yin Daoist Master said so, Wang Lu had to stop and smiled back. "If you have something to say, please say it." Outside the bamboo room, the old man and Wang Lu sat side by side. The old man was silent for a long time and then slowly said, "It has been more than 5 years since you entered the Lingjian school. However, the scene of you overcoming all the difficulties in the immortal path is still fresh in my memory. At that time, by a freak combination of factors, I almost made a big mistake by rejecting you outside the door. Even now, I still feel scared when I think about it." Wang Lu smiled. "Is it that serious? Lingjian School is full of talented people. Senior sister Lu Li, and that senior sister Zhu Shiyao, whom I haven't seen for 5 years, are not below me. If any of the other sects could have one of them, they would be able to settle the world. In fact, it's not a big deal for Lingjian School to lack me." After a pause, Wang Lu seriously said, "On the contrary, if I didn't cultivate the non-phase method here, I would definitely not have today's achievements. I am very clear about this." Feng Yin Daoist Master's eyes revealed an incomparable gratification. "It's not easy for you to think so. However, you don't have to belittle yourself. Although little Lu Li and Yao Er are the first-class geniuses in 9 regions, the future of Lingjian School still depends on you." Wang Lu was silent for a moment and then said, "Sect leader, could it be that Lingjian School recently failed in its investment and needs urgent capital injection?" Feng Yin jokingly scolded, "This kid, no matter how down and out Lingjian School is, it's not as greedy for your private money. What's more, do you really think a mere few hundred mysterious sky crystals can support the operation of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League?" Wang Lu said, "I'm just stating my position, please continue." Feng Yin said, "In this 9 regions, every few hundred or thousands of years, there will be a glorious era where heroes come forth in large numbers. Now, with the growth of your generation of young people, I'm afraid the glorious and turbulent era is not far away. Little Lu Li and Yao Er are the top cultivators, but their flaws are also very serious. They can't support the sky of Lingjian School. Therefore, today, I confer the honor of the lead disciple to you. I hope that in the future, you can live up to this title and become the worthy lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect." Wang Lu was silent for a moment and then said to the sect leader with a smile, "Rest assured, I like this mountain very much. I like this sect and the people in this sect very much." Feng Yin suddenly asked, "So, what about your master?" Wang Lu was stunned for a moment and then somewhat embarrassedly said, "Well, if one day, she and my mother fall into the river together, I can consider saving my mother first, and then hit her with a brick." This time, it was the sect leader's turn to fall into silence. After a long time, the old man sighed with emotion. In her life, she seems to be free and easy, but in fact, she's lonely. You better take care of yourself. Chapter 172. The time of the immortal cultivation was not short. Since the competition between the two sects, 5 years seemed to have slipped away in the blink of an eye. In the past 5 years, the Lingjian school had returned to its former tranquil and contented rhythm. The disciples cultivated, studied, and lived step by step. The elders, from time to time, went out to wander, sometimes went into seclusion on the mountain, and sometimes solved the doubts of the disciples. In the past 5 years, the disciples who had high hopes began to gradually grow up. Yu Yun, Yu Xinyao, Wen Bao, Zhu Qin, one after another, they successfully reached the foundation establishment stage. The side effects of the intensive cultivation before the competition between the two sects had also been offset, and the disciples had taken a solid step forward on the immortal cultivation path. As for Wang Lu, that would be another level of existence. As the lead disciple of the Lingjian school, Wang Lu's 5 years of cultivation experience was enough to make most of the Spirit Sword sect's disciples envious. The resources that the sect had invested in him were several times more than that of the average disciple. He was indeed in line with the position of the lead disciple of the sect, which gathered the entire sect's power to train him. The reason why Wang Lu didn't hesitate to get the lead disciple treatment, in addition to suppressing his unreliable master, was so that he could walk a bit faster on the immortal cultivation path. Of course, it was not because of a sense of crisis. Although he had a conversation with the sect leader 5 years ago on the stellar peak, which vaguely revealed that there might be a big change in the near future, for a deity stage cultivator, the concept of near was likely to refer to 100 or 200 years or even longer, far from the time to worry about it. Wang Lu's eagerness to cultivate was mostly due to his love of cultivation. He liked cultivation, liked non-phase method, liked the process of perfecting his jade mansion, quenching his primordial spirit, and solidifying his sword bone. He incomparably enjoyed the feeling of being stronger than the day before. His void spirit root and non-phase method were far from perfect. In the process of cultivation, he would always encounter various obstacles. Some of them could be taken shortcuts, while others could only be solved with time, energy, and resources. At this time, it was naturally unreliable to count on the impoverished non-phase peak, and the privilege of the lead disciple could play a great role. A qualified adventurer was bound to be a leveling maniac. After 5 years of crazy leveling, he had smoothly entered the middle level of the foundation establishment realm. At this point, Wang Lu had been cultivating for 10 years. Reaching the middle level of the foundation establishment realm in 10 years was considered quite fast among the geniuses of the Wanxian League. Not to mention that he also had the Great Heart Demon Oath to strengthen his non-phase method system. His comprehensive strength had become the top level among the younger generation. However, to say that they could leave all of their peers behind was not necessarily true. In the past 5 years, everyone had been making progress, such as the disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect who had been patiently waiting for revenge. Among them, the eldest brother Zhan Zai entered the high-level foundation establishment stage a year after he returned to the immortal sect. His progress was incredibly fast. After the promotion, he returned to the Spirit Sword Mountain as promised and paid a visit. Then, sure enough, he was once again defeated by the hands of Lu Li. Because Lu Li had also made amazing progress in this 1 year, the gap between her and Zhan Zai had widened a bit, which almost made Zhan Zai desperate. In the past year, he went deep into the sect's experiential learning place and experienced all kinds of hardships to have this kind of progress. However, unexpectedly, he still couldn't keep up with the footsteps of the other party. Zhan Zai's dispirited back caused the elders of the Lingjian school to sigh with emotion. Zhang Zai, Lu Li, Wang Lu. This group of peerless geniuses that made many cultivators sigh with emotion, each had their own lucky chance, but without exception, they were particularly persistent in immortal cultivation. Zhang Zai might have done a lot of things in the past year, but how could Lu Li be lazy? In the past year, Lu Li had fought at least 100 battles and was seriously injured dozens of times. Several times, her jade mansion was shaken and her primordial spirit cracked, which nearly led to a catastrophe. How could there be no progress in such desperate struggle? As for the person who fought with Lu Li for more than 100 times, which contributed to her rapid progress, could there be anyone else? In the past 5 years, another reason why Wang Lu desperately cultivated was because of Lu Li. Since the decisive battle on the Cloud Tread rooftop, Lu Li had been pestering him. For a girl with a simple temperament, the defeat on the Cloud Tread rooftop didn't make her resentful. On the contrary, Wang Lu's mystical swordsmanship deeply attracted her, causing her to be intoxicated. Since her brilliant sword heart was completed, there had never been a cultivator with similar cultivation base to her who could block her flying sword head-on. And the way Lu Li expressed her favorable impression of him was to fight with her sword from time to time. Every time, she would fight until the sky turned dark. Even if she was seriously injured, she would never get tired of it. In this regard, Wang Lu didn't refuse. Whether it was non-phase method or brilliant sword heart, both belonged to the category of methods that could be used in battle to nurture battle. Every time in actual combat, it could be of great help. Moreover, the more the fight, the more different the style of the opponent, the greater the benefit. The effect of simply cultivating in seclusion was not that obvious. However, whether it was brilliant sword heart or non-phase method, there was no lack of change. The same opponent could bring a completely different fighting experience. In the past 5 years, the two of them fought nearly 1,000 battles, and almost every battle was different. With so many battles, naturally, it was impossible for him to win all of them. Wang Lu roughly calculated that the odds of winning against Lu Li was about 50-50. In the first 2 years, he lost more than he won. Later on, in the last 3 years, he gradually recovered. However, it was still not too much of an advantage. Of course, compared to 5 years ago, when he exhausted all his means, he was still unable to defeat Lu Li fair and square. 5 years later, he was able to fight evenly with Lu Li, or even slightly better than her, which was already an extremely rare progress. If according to Wang Lu's popularized set of weighted value algorithm, his current comprehensive strength was about level 6 foundation establishment plus 20, while Lu Li was level 2 foundation establishment plus 16, which was almost equal to peak Shudan stage Xiao Ming. If the two people's attack and defense were calculated separately, the highest could even reach more than plus 25, entering the level of King Pill. In the past 5 years, Wang Lu and Lu Li, in addition to their cultivation base gains, they also had a friendship that was forged through nearly 1,000 battles. 5 years ago, the two successor disciples were just nodding acquaintances, but 5 years later, they had become good friends. In Wang Lu's words, Lu Li was mankind's best friend. On this day, Wang Lu had just finished his breakfast and cleaned up the tableware when he heard the lively and cheerful voice of a girl full of vitality coming from outside the house. Wang Lu, I'm here to play with you." Then a colorful cloud flashed before his eyes, and Lu Li was already standing in front of him, smiling like a flower. Wang Lu looked at the girl and nodded. "Sit down." Lu Li immediately sat at the table with a straight posture. "Stretch out your hand." The girl stretched out her slender jade-like hand. "Good girl." Then Wang Lu touched her small head, took out a few pieces of candy from his pocket, and put them in her hand. "Eat it." "Hee hee." Lu Li smiled charmingly, put the candy into her mouth, and then vaguely said, "Do you want to fight?" "Damn, still want to fight? Didn't we just fight yesterday?" However, Lu Li unexpectedly uttered out a philosophical sentence. "Yesterday we had a meal, today we still have to eat." "Young girl, don't be too demanding." Wang Lu snappily flicked her forehead. In the next few days, I probably won't be able to fight, so I'm going to go on a long trip. Luli nodded and said as if it was a matter of course we're going to fight outside the house. Master said that we absolutely can't fight inside the house. Otherwise, if we break something, I won't be able to eat dinner. Going on a long trip and going out are two different concepts. After knowing each other for 5 years, Wang Lu had a very high tolerance for Lu Li's IQ. He patiently explained, I'm going to go down the mountain to Cloud region, which will take about 10 days to half a month. During this period, I can't accompany you to fight. Lu Li was surprised. You want to go down the mountain? I'll be lonely. Then find a cucumber by yourself. Wang Lu helplessly shook his head. I don't intend to go, but unfortunately, I can't disobey Master's order. Lu Li asked, I remember you said that you're now the lead disciple, under one person but above tens of thousands of people. Your idiot Master's words have no binding force on you at all. The problem is, this time, she persuaded the sect leader, so I can't do anything about it. Wang Lu shrugged. That slut said that I, as the lead disciple of the sect, had been staying on the mountain for too long, wasting the honor of being the lead disciple. Now that I've been cultivating for 10 years, it's time for me to go down the mountain to wander the world and boost the sect's influence. That's simply absurd. If she really wants to improve the sect's influence, wouldn't it be better for her to run around naked in front of Xingjing Sect's gate? This is clearly a retaliation. Lu Li curiously asked, retaliation? Why? Wang Lu frowned. Because she reported to the sect leader that she tried to steal the sect's assets? Refused to be a guarantor for the loan? Asked Aya to cook dinner for her? There are too many reasons, it's hard to choose. In short, because of her, I can't accompany you to play on the mountain for the next few days. Oh. The girl listlessly drooped her head, looking pitiful. But Wang Lu had a second thought. I can take you down the mountain together. Down the mountain together? Is that really okay? Lu Li's eyes immediately lit up. There are a lot of fun things down the mountain. Unfortunately, my master has been blocking me from going. Wang Lu said, nonsense, with your IQ, no one would be at ease to let you go down the mountain alone. 8 years ago, when the sect organized the disciples to go down the mountain for experiential learning, Lu Li ate and played. Along the way, she ran into trouble all the way to the Blood Cloud Gorge, and even killed the 12 Blood Cloud demons. This experience sounded awe-inspiring and domineering, but her master, the master of Brilliant Peak, was nearly scared to death. However, if she was with him, there shouldn't be any problem. In the past 5 years, Lu Li had been trained by him to be as obedient as Hua Hua, and his fourth uncle was also particularly open-minded, allowing his precious disciple to be his pet to tease. But then again, in the past 5 years, with Wang Lu watching over her, the number of times Lu Li ran into trouble was indeed a lot less. And this time, Wang Lu was ordered to go down the mountain. If he was alone, it would indeed be boring. Among his good friends, Yu Xinyao, Wen Bao, and the others, their cultivation base had been pulled apart. Only Lu Li, who not only had similar strength, but also complemented each other in offense and defense. Moreover, they also had a tacit understanding from 5 years of fighting, which could be called a perfect combination. When Wang Lu asked Zhou Ming about this matter, Zhou Ming very happily nodded. Okay, actually, I have long wanted to arrange her to go down the mountain for experiential learning. If you go with her, I can rest assured. This child is pure in mind and doesn't know the sinister side of the world. She needs a sinister person to teach her. You are willing to help her, so I should thank you. Thank you, uncle, for your praise. Then I will accept this coolly without any politeness. After leaving the Brilliant Peak, Wang Lu went back to the non-phase peak to call Lu Li, led the mottled dog, and embarked on the journey to Cloud region. Chapter 173. Lu Li, let me ask you, what are we going to do down the mountain this time? Eat, drink, and be merry. Guess again? Eat all over the 9 regions? Continue to guess? Are all my guesses wrong? Nonsense, of course not. In the face of Wang Lu's roar, Luli innocently blinked her eyes. How could this be? We clearly said it's to eat, drink, and be merry. Wang Lu unceremoniously reached out and knocked the girl's head, ignoring the fact that Luli entered the sect earlier than him and was essentially his senior sister. Before we went down the mountain, I actually said it once, and now I repeat it for the second time. Listen, we have 3 things to do when we go down the mountain. The first is to send a letter to my master. She has a good friend in the Grand Cloud Mountain of Cloud region, and I want to give this letter to her. The second is to record what we see and hear along the way to increase our experience, broaden our horizons, and quench our primordial spirit and immortal heart. The third is to find a way to pick a fight, collect prestige, and open the sect's title as soon as possible. Then along the way, we can eat, drink, and be merry, living a free and unrestrained life. But you only remember the last sentence. Luli pursed her mouth. The first part is too complicated, I don't understand it at all. Forget it, just remember one thing. Whatever I tell you to do, do it. Oh. Seeing that Luli was no longer making a fuss, Wang Lu sighed with emotion that after 5 years, Luli was still the same as before. He took out a bag of marinated beef cubes from his mustard seed bag and threw it to the girl as a reward for being obedient. Luli giggled, opened the paper bag, and began to eat non-stop, which made the mottled dog endlessly envious. They were both humans' best friends, but this disparity in treatment was really heartbreaking. Luli was even more proud of herself. She swaggeringly licked the minced meat and salt on her fingers. Her scallion-like fingers were immediately stained with a layer of crystal. Her expression of enjoying the delicious food made the stupid dog salivate uncontrollably. However, after eating half of the bag, Luli carefully put away the beef cubes, no longer greedy. Seeing this, Wang Lu curiously asked, "Why don't you eat it?" Luli very seriously replied, "If I eat it now, I won't be able to eat it later." Wang Lu was amused. What kind of logic is that? Why can't I eat it in the future? Master said, when the disciples of Spirit Sword sect go down the mountain for experiential learning, they must seriously experience the sufferings of the world of mortals, they must not covet extravagance. In any case, the last time I went down the mountain, I was always hungry, and the spirit stones and silver that Master gave me were all spent in no time. How many spirit stones and silver did Martial Uncle give you? Fortunately, Luli wasn't stupid enough to count with her fingers. She quickly replied, 5,000 taels of silver, 300 spirit stones. Objectively speaking, Zhou Ming wasn't stingy. With Luli's peak chi refining stage cultivation base at that time, she didn't need to spend that much. 5,000 silvers and 300 spirit stones were enough to support her life for several years. However, it was the first time that Luli went down the mountain, so she didn't know about moderation, nor did she understand the price of goods. In a bustling capital city's imperial banquet restaurant, she ate all kinds of delicacies. In just a few days, her traveling expenses were completely exhausted, and she had no choice but to swallow her saliva and dejectedly leave. In the following year, she really experienced a lot of hardships. Listening to Luli reminiscing about the bitterness and thinking about the sweetness, and how she treasured a bag of beef cubes, Wang Lu could see that this child had really suffered a lot the last time she went down the mountain. She already had a psychological shadow in her heart when she went down the mountain for experiential learning. He couldn't help but laugh and pat the girl's head. This time, since you're going down the mountain with me, you don't need to worry too much. Martial Uncle entrusted you to me, not to let you starve here. Luli was actually puzzled. This time, when she went down the mountain, the traveling expenses that her master gave her were not as much as the last time. And Wang Lu. Nanfei's Peak has always been famous for its poverty. However, while the girl was still confused, she suddenly saw a silvery light coming from the horizon, and its target was exactly her and Wang Lu. At this time, they had just left the boundary of the Spirit Sword Mountain, but they didn't know who would come looking for them. Lu Li's eyes turned and immediately swept a glance at that rapid and hazy silvery light. It was actually something that was recorded in the Tang Cloud Hall's Book of Strange Objects. Cloud Wave Boat was a commonly used flying vehicle by cultivators nowadays. Its speed was extremely fast, and the flying process was smooth and comfortable, thus it was quite popular. However, this silver flying boat was 100 times more luxurious than the one in the textbook. Even Lu Li knew how precious the layer of refined silver cloud on its surface was. Moreover, its flying speed was faster and smoother than what was recorded in the textbook. The girl's sword heart sensed that the flying boat was not hostile, so she withdrew her gaze and ignored it. No matter how good the flying boat was, in any case, it couldn't be used as an entrance. However, a moment later, the flying boat descended from the sky and stopped in front of the two of them. From the silver boat, a white-clothed cultivator slowly walked out and respectfully saluted in front of Wang Lu. "Greetings, Mr. Director." Wang Lu smiled. "Oldie, long time no see, your cultivation has improved a lot." The one who came down from the flying boat was the Wisdom Sect's Vice Sect Leader, Intelligence Revenue Services Deputy Director, Yi Chuchen. It had been nearly 8 years since Wang Lu annexed the Seven Stars Sect with the Wisdom Sect's Sect Leader. At that time, the Seven Stars Sect Leader had completely adapted to the Vice Sect Leader's identity. Now that he thought about it, Yi Chuchen's heart was filled with endless gratitude when he was defeated by Wang Lu and then incorporated into the sect. If not for Wang Lu, he would just be a low-level loose cultivator. Now, although the Wisdom Sect was still the most junior sect in the Wanxian League, his identity and status had undergone earth-shaking changes. And as a cultivator, he had gained too many benefits. First, when Wang Lu perfected the cultivation method for him, the bottleneck that had shackled him for many years suddenly disappeared. Second, as the Wisdom Sect's Vice Sect Leader, he had countless privileges. With a large number of resources, it would be difficult for his cultivation not to advance by leaps and bounds. After a few years, although his cultivation level had only advanced by 1 level, for a person with mediocre aptitude like him, advancing another level in the Shudan stage was more than just a step further. Moreover, his comprehensive strength had doubled. When they first met, as the Seven Stars Sect Leader, Yi Chuchen was just a level 9 Shudan -3 dregs. But now, he was an 8th level Shudan Xiaoming, which was equivalent to advancing by 4 levels in 8 years, advancing by leaps and bounds. If he didn't have to deal with the sect's affairs, which involved a lot of energy, his achievement could be even higher. All of this, of course, was thanks to Wang Lu. Therefore, Yi Chuchen had long been loyal and devoted to Wang Lu, even if in recent years, Wang Lu had been concentrating on cultivating in the Spirit Sword Mountain and had increasingly let go of the sect's affairs. "Mr. Director, as soon as I received your instruction, I immediately came here. Moreover, according to your instruction, I brought you this custom-made Cloud Wave boat, Cloud Wave 2000. With that, Yi Chuchen chanted an incantation. That 30 feet long, completely black flying boat opened an entrance, revealing the inside of the boat. Looking from the entrance, the inside was unexpectedly vast, far more spacious than it looked. Lu Li's eyes immediately widened, thinking that this was completely different from what was written in the book. The book said that the Cloud Wave boat was easy to use and had a high performance-to-price ratio. However, the flying space was narrow, and the cultivators were often extremely uncomfortable. But now, it seemed like that was completely wrong. Seeing Lu Li's puzzled expression, Wang Lu smiled and explained, "This is the local tyrant version of the Cloud Wave boat that I asked my men to go to the mysterious Sky Mansion's overseas Chinese crafts hall to customize. Inside the boat, there is a separate immortal cave, which has all the necessary tools. Come on, let's go inside first." Upon entering the flying boat, the girl's heart was even more shocked. It turned out that the inside of the boat was not only the hall that she could see from the entrance. Along the edge of the hall, there were also stairs leading to the top and bottom. Who knew how many rooms were hidden inside? In the girl's incomparable astonishment, Yi Chuchen once again chanted the incantation to close the entrance. The flying boat soared into the air, but the inside of the boat was stable without a trace of shaking. After starting the flying boat, Yi Chuchen said to Wang Lu. Unfortunately, the craftsmen of the third rank and above in the Heavenly Crafts Hall are not here. Therefore, the immortal cave inside the boat can only be done to this extent. You said that the landscape, grass, and trees, as well as the singing and dancing puppets can't be realized. This subordinate is incompetent, please forgive me, Mr. Director. Wang Lu went straight to the lounge chair in the hall and then waved his hand. No problem. To be able to do this in just 10 days is already not bad. After all, we're not supreme customers, so we haven't spent enough points. Later on, if there's an opportunity, we'll just make do with it. With that, Wang Lu looked at Lu Li, who was curiously exploring around the boat, and then said with a smile, Old Yi, take out the prepared dishes. Yes. Before long, a table of luxurious dishes was served. Lu Li, who was crazily running upstairs and downstairs, was immediately attracted. She incredulously looked at the dishes in the hall. Heavenly fragrant rain dew, vermilion jade 5 flowers, emerald cabbage, mysterious ice cheese. Previously in the Imperial Feast restaurant, Lu Li had never seen such luxurious dishes. Was this real? Even with her brilliant sword heart's clear temperament, she still couldn't extricate herself from this incomparable shock. In just a moment of daze, Lu Li couldn't help but continuously swallow her saliva. Wang Lu laughed. What are you staring at? This is for you to eat. Really? Wang Lu picked up a piece of fat and tender lamb chop and threw it to the stupid dog, which then swallowed it in one bite. If you don't want to eat, there's no more. I want to eat. Before long, a table of dishes that could feed more than 10 people was cleaned up by Wang Lu and his 2 best friends. With Lu Li's clear and transparent physique, it was very difficult for her to feel full. However, at this time, after eating a table of dishes, she couldn't help but feel satisfied. Old Yi, since you've eaten and drank to your heart's content, you can start the program now. Yes. Then, she heard the sound of bamboo flute in spirals in the hall. Wang Lu leaned back on the recliner, slightly rocking back and forth in satisfaction. Lu Li couldn't help but be curious. Wang Lu, this flying boat, is it you who bought it? Yes. How much is this going to cost? Even with Lu Li's naivety, she also knew that such a luxurious flying boat must have a sky-high price. At least, just the table of dishes alone would cost tens of thousands of silver coins, or hundreds of spirit stones. Wang Lu smiled. Preferential price, 800,000 spirit stones. 800,000. Lu Li incredulously repeated the number. Good, so rich. Wang Lu laughed. Public expense to buy an official car, of course I have money. Public expense? Yes, didn't I tell you? I have my own business down the mountain, a sect. Wang Lu nodded and then earnestly said, although Wisdom's sect is founded by me, a qualified manager must clearly distinguish between public and private accounts. The money that should be spent by the public can't be spent on private accounts. Lu Li felt that there was something wrong with Wang Lu's self-righteous explanation, but she couldn't point it out. After gawking for a moment, Lu Li blankly said, but, Master said, to go down the mountain for experiential learning, we must be diligent and thrifty. Wang Lu waved his hand to interrupt her. What a joke. I, the dignified leader of Wisdom's sect, every word and deed represents the face of tens of thousands of people. If I am diligent and thrifty, it would only make people look down on Wisdom's sect. With that, Wang Lu confidently lied down. Little Lu Li, learn well, this is called leader treatment. Chapter 174. The Cloud Wave boat went all the way to the northwest, flying toward the cloud region. This flying boat soared high in the sky and could travel tens of thousands of miles a day. Even with the vastness of the 9 regions, it only needed 1 or 2 days to fly out of the Blue River region and enter the neighboring Cloud region. Regarding this, Luli was full of amazement and embarrassment. Because before she went down the mountain, her master had seriously warned her that on this experiential learning trip to the Cloud region, she must observe and remember a lot along the way. The last experiential learning trip had completely turned into a gourmet trip, so this time, she must not mess around like that. With their speed, it would take them at least 10 days to reach the Cloud region, and along the way, they must carefully observe and think. However, looking at the white clouds outside the flying boat, as well as the clear sky, Luli's simple mind couldn't help but doubt. If they flew like this, they would arrive at the Cloud region in less than 2 days, so should they remember these things along the way? However, since her master had requested it, she could only remember it. Although Luli was naive and ignorant of worldly affairs, her memory was excellent. She stood at the edge of the hall, looking at the waterfall-like receding clouds outside the window. Her mind had already memorized all the scene in front of her. She even automatically imagined the tumbling clouds into their respective images. For example, some were like oval-shaped barbecue, some were like square barbecue, some were like dripping oil barbecue, and the girl earnestly memorized them. She was ready to go back and seriously tell her master about the result of her memory. She believed that the old man would certainly be happy. As for Wang Lu and Yi Chuchen, at this time, they were sitting around a tea table in the hall, listening to Yi Chuchen's report on the work of the past few years. In the past few years when Wang Lu was cultivating on the mountain, the summary of the wisdom sect's work would be sent to the non-phase peak every 10 days. Therefore, he had a general understanding of the situation. However, some of the important details needed to be supplemented by Yi Chuchen verbally. In general, the development of the wisdom sect had entered a good upward track. Even without Wang Lu's hands-on support, the wisdom sect still had a foundation for its own development. Currently, the number of wisdom sect's followers, broadly counted, had exceeded tens of millions of people, and the Great Ming country, as the foundation of the wisdom sect, was managed like an iron bucket. Yi Chuchen, Li Nana, and Daoist Ming Yun, these 3 giants, in the Great Ming country, their prestige was not inferior to the Prime Minister. The sect's mobilization and organization ability could be said to be against the heaven. With the combined power of tens of thousands of people, plus the huge investment from Wang Lu 5 years ago, the wisdom sect's infrastructure has achieved great achievements. The output of low-grade spirit objects and spirit plants was so large that even the mysterious Sky Mansion paid attention to it. Before the end of the year, they signed an agreement to establish a long-term cooperative relationship. However, just by relying on these basic constructions, the annual income that the wisdom sect could obtain had already made people who knew the inside story dumbfounded. If it was simply to amass money, at this time, the wisdom sect had already entered the harvesting period. Wang Lu's amazing investment in the past would, at most, return it in 10 years. And if they carried out some simple capital operations, the earnings would be even more amazing. However, Wang Lu's ambition was not limited to this. Because spirit stones gradually lost their value when they reached the top. Tens of thousands of spirit stones might be able to buy a Daoist master of King Pill as a thug, but even with 1 million spirit stones, it was still difficult to invite a Daoist master of Yuanying stage to come forward. In the mysterious Sky Mansion, they could show their VIP status and buy an 8th-rank spiritual treasure with hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. However, higher-rank spiritual treasures were priceless. And Wang Lu's solution was very simple: to upgrade the industry, and in the future, to be self-sufficient. To achieve this grand blueprint, the biggest problem was the lack of talent. Currently, the Wisdom sect had tens of millions of followers, but the several vice sect leaders were only Shudan stage cultivators. Moreover, among Shudan stage cultivators, they were not considered strong. Although they spent money to hire several King Pill level thugs, overall, they were still far from a mature sect. What to do? Very simple: throw money. Right now, the wisdom sect was lacking in everything, but not in money. Although it was very difficult to attract those famous people with genuine talent by relying on spirit stones alone, if those famous people didn't come, a few broken cultivators who couldn't stay in the big sects would still be better than a loose cultivator like Yi Chuchen. Wang Lu asked the wisdom sect to spend a lot of money to attract talented people and provide them with extremely luxurious welfare. This strategy had been implemented for more than half a year, and it had really attracted a lot of people from the big sects who, although they were not in their eyes, were incomparably precious to the wisdom sect, which played a great role in promoting the wisdom sect. And as the leader of the wisdom sect, Wang Lu naturally enjoyed the due leadership treatment. In fact, if the leader didn't take the lead, it would instead make the onlookers doubt your strength. And Wang Lu wanted to use this Lingyun 2000 to show the world, wisdom's sect is rich and overbearing, full of confidence. Recruiting talented people, welcome to join. After handing over the sect's work to Yi Chuchen, only half a day had passed, but this shoot-on-stage vice sect leader already felt physically and mentally exhausted. Reporting work and listening to instructions in front of Wang Lu was indeed a bit stressful. Although the young man in front of him was a stage lower than him, Yi Chuchen was very clear about the gap in strength between the two of them. 8 years ago, when Wang Lu was still in the qi cultivating stage, he was already able to use his non-phase sword to contend against the 7 stars sword art that he was so proud of. But now, after 8 years, he was afraid that he didn't even have the qualification to make a move against him. With that stupid model dog, he was not his opponent. Moreover, although Wang Lu's tone was calm, his words were always accurate. Yi Chuchen's mistakes in the past few years were easily picked out by him. Although he didn't criticize him, it still made him break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, the unbearable time was finally over. Yi Chuchen sighed in relief, smiled, and introduced the local conditions and customs of the Cloud region to Wang Lu. The Cloud region was located in the northwest of the Blue River region. As an important part of the 9 regions, it had a vast territory, rich resources, and so on. Needless to say, its biggest characteristic was chaos. Unlike the Blue River region and the other regions that were suppressed by the 5 unique of the Wanxian League, the Cloud region never had a particularly powerful deterrent force, not even the Wanxiang sect or the Flowing Cloud sect. The land of the region was divided by dozens of 3rd and 4th rank sects, such as the White Dragon Temple and Merciful Cloud Mountain. To put it nicely, it was like 100 flowers blooming, but to put it bluntly, it was like a warlord separatist rule. However, this situation also had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that the situation was chaotic, which was beneficial for sects like the Wisdom sect to fish in troubled waters. The disadvantage was that if they were not careful, they would capsize. The strength of the Wisdom sect was still not comparable to those 3rd and 4th rank sections. Therefore, several days ago, Wang Lu sent a letter to Yi Chuchen, asking him to prepare the Cloud Wave boat and go to the Cloud region together. This made Yi Chuchen very curious. What exactly did the director want to do in the Cloud region this time? It's nothing much. I'm just delivering a letter for Master, Wang Lu said lightly. Yi Chuchen was a little surprised and annoyed. Can't you just leave the messy task of delivering the letter to the people of SF Express? Why do you need the Ministry of Labor to come here? Wang Lu chuckled. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. At the foot of the mountain, I am the leader of the Wisdom sect, the sect leader. I'm just the chief disciple on the mountain, I don't have the right to put on airs. Besides, apart from delivering the letter, I also have my own things to do. Old Yi, is there anything fun in the Grand Cloud Mountain surrounding area recently? Yi Chuchen had done his homework. After thinking for a while, he said, Grand Cloud Mountain is in the Grand Cloud Empire. There are White Dragon Temple, Merciful Cloud Mountain, and other high-rank cultivation sects above it. Below it is the imperial power of the Grand Cloud Empire suppressing it, so it's relatively stable. However, recently, sects from other states established branches near Grand Cloud Mountain. Their attitudes are rude and unreasonable, so there's a lot of conflict. Hearing this, Wang Lu's heart skipped a beat. He guessed that the matter his master had entrusted to him was likely related to this matter. Thus, he perked up and said, "Oh? Tell me the details." Yi Chuchen gawked and couldn't help but wryly smile. He only knew the general information about the Grand Cloud Mountain, so how could he know the details? Nevertheless, Yi Chuchen still recounted the outline of the matter to her. The one who stirred up the trouble was the third-rank sect Beast Master School in the Southern Heaven region. More than a year ago, many elders of the Beast Master School, along with hundreds of disciples, traveled thousands of miles from the Southern Heaven region to the Cloud region and established a branch near the Grand Cloud Mountain. Regarding this, the host, the Grand Cloud Empire, did not stop them. On the contrary, the imperial family and the court were happy to see this happen. Being able to have a not-so-strong or not-so-weak foreign cultivation sect settle in their territory was beneficial for them to play the balancing act among the other immortal cultivation sects. As for the local sects in the Grand Cloud Empire, they didn't oppose it. First, 3 years ago, the cultivation base of the Beast Master School's sect leader had advanced, reaching the peak Yuanying stage. The Beast Master School was already considered powerful among the third-rank sects, much stronger than the fourth-rank sects like White Dragon Temple. Second, there were no valuable resources in the vicinity of the Grand Cloud Mountain, so they could take advantage of the situation to sell a favor, so why not? However, only a year later, the harmonious atmosphere couldn't be maintained. The Beast Master School had a conflict with the local government. Several cultivators injured nearby civilians, and after the government sent people to interrogate them, they also injured the officers and insulted the officials. This kind of thing was actually not a big deal. After all, cultivators were aloof and lawless. However, when the cultivators of White Dragon Temple were entrusted to go to the Beast Master School's branch to demand an explanation, they were humiliated and abused. Later, it escalated into a violent conflict, and the contradiction began to intensify. Fortunately, later, under the mediation of the Wanxian League, the situation didn't further escalate. The Beast Master School's branch leader came forward to apologize, and White Dragon Temple and the Grand Cloud Empire reluctantly accepted it. But the root problem is not solved. I think this peace won't last long. The root problem? Yi Chuchen shook his head and said with a disgusted face, "The Beast Master School who came here to establish a branch is a relatively radical and extreme sect. Their 3 views are completely different from ordinary people, but they are also self-righteous and extreme, never allowing any opposition." "What do you mean specifically?" Yi Chuchen said, "Mr. Director, you also know that the cultivators of the Beast Master School often associate with spirit birds and spirit beasts and form a deep relationship with them, so." Wang Lu's mind turned, and he roughly guessed the cause of the matter. He couldn't help but sneer. Interesting, this time, the opponent is a small animal rights organization? Speaking to this, Wang Lu turned his head, looked at the model dog on the ground, and then looked at Luli, who was standing by the window looking at the clouds. "Damn, you guys actually met your family." You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.